Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. A young man sat in his luxurious living room, surrounded by an air of affluence. The sleek modern decor, priceless paintings, and state-of-the-art technology reflected his immense success as a businessman. Stretched across the glass coffee table lay a stack of manga volumes, each bearing the unmistakable title, Bleach. He flipped the final page of the last volume of the Thousand-Year Blood War arc. The vivid imagery of Ichigo Kurosaki's triumph stared back at him. He sighed deeply, leaning back against the plush couch. He thought to himself that if he were Ichigo, he would have done better. With all those powers and allies, it seemed like Ichigo barely scraped by half the time. A wry smile crept onto his face as he closed the book. He stretched his arms and gazed at the expansive city skyline visible through his floor-to-ceiling windows. Later that evening, he decided to step outside for a walk. His mind wandered between his thoughts on Bleach and his latest business ventures. The quiet suburban street was serene, illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights. Suddenly, a faint cry broke the silence. He froze, straining to locate the sound. There it was again, soft, desperate, unmistakable. Following the sound, he discovered a baby lying abandoned in a stroller near a park bench. He muttered, looking around, but there was no one in sight. As he leaned in to check on the child, a chill ran down his spine. From the corner of his eye, he spotted a car speeding recklessly down the nearby road, its headlights cutting through the night. The stroller began to roll toward the street. Panic seized him as he realized the danger. Without hesitation, he dashed toward the baby, adrenaline surging through his veins. Time seemed to slow as the stroller neared the edge of the road. He lunged forward, shoving the stroller back to safety just as the car's brakes screeched. Pain shot through his body as the car grazed him, throwing him onto the pavement. The impact left him winded, his vision swimming as he struggled to stay conscious. The baby, now safe, began to wail. The driver of the car stumbled out, horrified, as others rushed to the scene. Lying on the cold asphalt, he felt his strength slipping away. His vision blurred, but he managed a faint smile, thinking at least the child was okay. As darkness overtook him, a peculiar warmth enveloped his body. Faint whispers echoed in his mind, ancient, powerful, and unrelenting. A strange sensation coursed through him, as if his very soul was being rewritten. His last coherent thought before losing consciousness was a question: was this his second chance? Surrounded by darkness, he felt weightless, as though floating in an endless void. Slowly, a radiant golden light emerged, illuminating a vast, ethereal plain. Before him stood a figure of indescribable majesty, an embodiment of divinity, radiating power and calm. The man blinked, his injuries seemingly vanished. "Where am I? What happened?" he asked. The figure spoke in a voice that resonated through his being, soothing yet commanding. "You have left your mortal plane. Yet, your selfless act to save a child has not gone unnoticed. As a reward, you will be granted 3 wishes. Choose wisely, for they shall define your new existence." His eyes widened in astonishment. He wasn't religious, but the weight of the moment was undeniable. His thoughts raced, yet the answer seemed almost obvious. This was his chance to truly live the life he dreamed of. He steadied himself and bowed slightly to the divine figure. "If that's true, here are my wishes. I want to retain my individuality, but I want to inhabit Ichigo Kurosaki's body with black hair and red eyes." The god raised a hand, and he felt a surge of energy coursing through him. His reflection appeared in the air, a transformed Ichigo with striking black hair and glowing crimson eyes. "My second wish, I want to wield 2 Zanpakuto, one embodying the Shurikai and Bankai abilities I described earlier, one resembling Naruto's powers and the other like Sasuke's. And I also want to possess Ichigo's hollow abilities." The divine figure nodded, and 2 blades materialized before him. One radiated fiery orange and black energy, while the other crackled with dark lightning. "The powers of the hollow shall intertwine with your soul, granting you a mask of unrivaled might. He felt his essence shift, a surge of raw power merging with his soul. He clenched his fists, feeling the untamed strength coursing through him. For my final wish, I want Ichigo's Quincy powers, including the ability to activate a Volstandig. Let the racier I control be black and red. The figure smiled, and with a wave of their hand, a bow and an arrow materialized in front of him. He reached out, grasping the bow, feeling a connection to the very fabric of the universe. Your Volstandig shall be unique, a form unlike any other Quincy. When you ascend, your power will rival that of gods. The divine figure gestured, and a doorway of light appeared before him. You are now reborn. Use these powers wisely, for the worlds you enter will challenge you beyond imagination. He bowed deeply, gratitude and determination shining in his crimson eyes. I won't waste this chance. Thank you. As he stepped through the doorway, the light engulfed him, and he was no more. In the radiant warmth of the divine light, he felt his consciousness fading, only to awaken in a strange, comforting darkness. The sound of muffled voices reached him, soothing and unfamiliar. Then, a rush of cold air hit him, and he instinctively cried out a baby's cry. Bright light flooded his vision as he blinked against it. His small body was cradled in warm arms, and he looked up to see a woman with gentle, loving eyes. Her long, flowing hair framed her face as she smiled down at him, tears of joy glistening in her eyes. Welcome to the world, my son, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Next to her stood a man with a strong build and a calm demeanor. His crimson eyes softened as he gazed at the newborn. He has your strength, the man said, smiling slightly. And my eyes. The baby's small hands grasped at the air, his black hair already thick and soft, and his piercing red eyes glowed faintly as though holding a hidden power. His new senses slowly adjusted to the world around him, and he could hear muffled voices speaking in soft, loving tones. Masaki, he's beautiful, a deep, warm voice said. The baby opened his eyes, their vivid crimson glow startling even himself. He saw a kind, strong-looking man with black hair and a wide grin gazing at him. Beside the man was a woman with radiant, warm eyes and a tender smile. Her orange hair framed her face as she gently cradled him. His hair is just like yours, Ishin, Masaki said, laughing softly. But his eyes. There's something else entirely. They're so striking, like a burning ember. Ishin leaned closer, inspecting the baby's black hair and those piercing red eyes. He's unique, all right. Our little miracle, he said with pride, placing a hand on Masaki's shoulder. The baby's small hands moved in the air, and for a fleeting moment, a faint aura of energy surrounded him, red and black, swirling with power. Masaki and Ishin exchanged a brief, knowing look, their expressions a mixture of awe and curiosity. He's special, Masaki whispered, holding her son close. He'll grow up to do amazing things. I just know it. Karakura town was quiet that day, the kind of calm that comes after a storm, though no one could have predicted the whirlwind brewing inside the Kurosaki household. Inside the modest clinic that served as both home and workplace, a young Ichigo Kurosaki sat cross-legged on the living room floor, a book twice the size of his hand spread open before him. At just 5 years old, his black hair gave him a striking, almost unearthly appearance. His eyes, however, betrayed a depth far beyond his age, a sharpness and understanding that set him apart from his peers. Are you seriously reading that, Ichi? Masaki's melodic voice broke through the quiet. She stood in the kitchen doorway, a dish towel draped over her shoulder, her hands on her hips as she smiled warmly at her eldest son. Yes, Mom, Ichigo replied, not looking up. His small finger traced a line of text in the medical encyclopedia he had pulled from the shelf earlier that morning. But this part doesn't make sense. If the body regenerates red blood cells every few months, why do some people need transfusions even with minor injuries? Masaki blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She had long accepted that Ichigo was special, but even she wasn't always prepared for the depth of his curiosity. She walked over, crouching beside him. Well, she began, smoothing his hair affectionately, it depends on their health and what kind of injury they've had. Sometimes, the body can't produce blood fast enough to make up for the loss. That's why doctors step in to help. Ichigo frowned, clearly dissatisfied with the explanation. But wouldn't it be better to find a way to make the body produce more blood faster? Instead of taking it from someone else? Masaki laughed, not unkindly. Maybe you can be the one to figure that out someday, Ichi. For now, how about we take a break? Your sisters are waiting for you outside. Ichigo hesitated, glancing out the window where his younger sisters, Karen and Yuzu, were playing tag on the lawn. He loved them dearly, but he had always felt a step removed from their world of simple joys and games. Still, he couldn't deny the warmth in his mother's voice. Okay, he said, closing the heavy book with a thud. But only for a little while. By the time Ichigo was 6, his reputation as a prodigy had spread throughout Karakura. Teachers at his elementary school marveled at his ability to grasp complex concepts, often remarking to his parents that he belonged in a classroom several grades ahead. But Ichigo didn't just excel academically, he was also quick to learn physical activities. His father, Isshin, who often played the part of a bumbling fool, had taken to sparring with Ichigo in the evenings under the guise of playful roughhousing. Come on, Ichigo. Show me what you've got. Isshin bellowed one evening, lunging at his son with exaggerated movements. Ichigo dodged easily, rolling to the side and popping back to his feet with surprising agility for a 6-year-old. Dad, you're so predictable. You always leave your right side open when you charge like that. Isshin froze mid-step, his grin faltering. What? No, I don't. You do, Ichigo said matter-of-factly, crossing his arms. Every single time. From the sidelines, Masaki covered her mouth to stifle a laugh while Karen and Yuzu cheered Ichigo on. Fine, Isshin grumbled, rubbing the back of his neck. Maybe you're smarter than I thought. But don't think you can beat me just because you've figured out one little thing. Ichigo smirked, a rare show of confidence. We'll see about that. Their sparring sessions became a regular occurrence, and while Isshin always held back, he couldn't help but marvel at his son's natural instincts. It was as if Ichigo had been born to fight, though Isshin prayed silently that he'd never have to use those skills for real. By the age of 7, Ichigo had developed an uncanny ability to read people. It wasn't just his family who noticed. Neighbors, teachers, and even strangers often remarked on how he seemed to understand their thoughts before they spoke. One afternoon, while walking home from school with Masaki, Ichigo tugged on her hand to stop. Mom, he said, his voice unusually serious. That man needs help. Masaki followed his gaze to a middle-aged man sitting on a park bench. His clothes were disheveled, his eyes downcast. He clutched a small, crumpled photograph in one hand. Ichi, he's just resting, Masaki said gently, though she couldn't shake the unease creeping up her spine. No, he's sad, Ichigo insisted, his brow furrowing. Really sad. We should talk to him. Masaki hesitated for only a moment before relenting. Together, they approached the man, and Masaki softly asked if he was okay. The man looked up, startled, before tears began streaming down his face. I lost my wife last year, he confessed, his voice breaking. Today would have been our anniversary. Masaki placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, offering kind words, but it was Ichigo who truly surprised her. You shouldn't stay sad forever, Ichigo said, his tone earnest. She wouldn't want that. You should remember the happy things, too. The man stared at Ichigo, then smiled through his tears. You're a wise kid, he said. Thank you. As they walked away, Masaki marveled at her son's ability to connect with others, even in their darkest moments. By the time he turned 8, Ichigo had grown into a confident, capable child, though his family still teased him for his occasional seriousness. Don't be so uptight, Ichi. Karen teased one evening at the dinner table. I'm not uptight, Ichigo shot back, though a faint blush on his cheeks betrayed his embarrassment. "You are," Yuzu chimed in, giggling. "But that's okay. We love you anyway." "Thanks," Ichigo said dryly, earning more laughter from his sisters. Isshin had been unusually quiet, a mischievous glint in his eye. Without warning, he leapt out of his chair, dramatically throwing himself at Ichigo. "My son! My brilliant, wonderful son," he cried, wrapping Ichigo in a bear hug. "You're growing up so fast." "Dad, get off me!" Ichigo protested, squirming. Masaki watched the scene with a mix of amusement and exasperation. "Isshin, leave him alone. And sit down before you knock something over." Reluctantly, Isshin released Ichigo and returned to his seat, though he continued to beam at his son. "I can't help it. I'm just so proud of him." Ichigo rolled his eyes, but a small smile tugged at his lips. Despite his father's antics, he knew how much he was loved. As the family settled back into their meal, Ichigo felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life he had. He didn't know what the future held, but he was determined to face it head-on, armed with the knowledge, strength, and love his family had given him. It was a gloomy evening, rain pouring relentlessly over the Kurosaki family as Masaki and 9-year-old Ichigo walked along a quiet street. The distant sound of thunder echoed through the skies, setting an ominous mood. Masaki, holding an umbrella, glanced at Ichigo and smiled warmly. Suddenly, a figure appeared ahead of them, a young girl, drenched and trembling. She called out weakly, "Help me. Please." Masaki's instincts kicked in, and she immediately stepped forward to help. Ichigo hesitated, his senses tingling with unease. "Mom. Something's wrong." Before he could react, the figure transformed into a menacing creature, lunging toward Masaki with terrifying speed. "Stay back, Ichigo!" Masaki yelled, shoving him away. She prepared to defend herself, but the creature was too quick. As the creature's claw neared Masaki, something snapped inside Ichigo. A surge of power erupted from him, illuminating the rain-soaked street in a flash of energy. Time seemed to freeze as a voice echoed within Ichigo's mind, a deep, commanding tone, calm yet filled with undeniable authority. "I am your power," the voice said. "Born in darkness, forged by destiny. Awaken, my son, and protect those who dare to harm our kind." Ichigo's eyes widened as a silhouette emerged within his mind, a young man with piercing eyes and a regal presence. The moment their gazes met, Ichigo felt an overwhelming surge of strength and clarity. In the real world, Ichigo's body moved as if guided by an unseen force. His spiritual pressure erupted, the rain sizzling as it touched the energy radiating from him. A bow materialized in his hand, its form twisted and jagged, colored black and crimson. Ichigo drew an arrow, its energy pulsating ominously, and fired it with unerring precision. The arrow struck the creature, pinning it to the ground. "You dared to harm my family." Ichigo's voice was a strange mixture of his own and the commanding voice, deep and chilling. "You'll regret that." With ruthless efficiency, Ichigo fired arrow after arrow, each one embedding itself into the creature's body. The creature screamed, but there was no mercy in Ichigo's glowing eyes. The creature begged for its life, but Ichigo's energy only grew darker. The arrows twisted and burned, dissolving the creature's form bit by bit. "Enough, Ichigo." Masaki's voice cut through the chaos, jolting him back. The bow vanished from his hand, and his spiritual pressure receded. Ichigo collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. His eyes returned to their normal color, though he felt the lingering presence within him. "You are strong, my son," the voice echoed faintly before fading away. Masaki knelt beside him, embracing him tightly. "It's okay, Ichigo. It's over now." As they stood in the rain, Ichigo looked at his trembling hands, both awed and terrified by the power he had just unleashed. For the first time, he realized his life would never be the same again. The rain continued to pour as Masaki knelt beside Ichigo, her heart breaking at the sight of her son trembling, his small frame racked with silent sobs. His hands were stained, and Ichigo stared at them, wide-eyed and horrified. I am sorry. I didn't mean to. His voice cracked, barely audible over the sound of the rain. He curled into himself, shaking uncontrollably. I'm a monster. Masaki pulled him into her arms, cradling him tightly. No, Ichigo, she said softly, her voice steady despite the tears forming in her eyes. You're not a monster. You're my brave, kind son. I'm not. I'm not. Ichigo whimpered, burying his face in her shoulder. His body shook with each broken sob. I couldn't stop. You protected me, Ichigo, Masaki whispered, stroking his rain-soaked hair. You saved me. You did what you had to do. I'm sorry, Mom, Ichigo choked out again, clutching her tightly. I'm sorry. Masaki held him closer, standing up despite the weight of the child in her arms. You don't have to be sorry, Ichigo. You're not alone in this. I'm here for you. Always. As they walked home, Ichigo's muttered apologies didn't cease. His voice was faint, broken, as if he was pleading with himself for forgiveness. Masaki's arms tightened around him, her heart aching as she whispered words of comfort, even though she knew it might take a long time for him to believe them. When they reached the house, Masaki gently set Ichigo down and wiped his face with a warm cloth. Let's get you cleaned up, she said softly. And then we'll talk, okay? No matter what, I'm here for you. Ichigo nodded weakly, his eyes red and puffy. I don't want to be a monster. You're not, Masaki said firmly, cupping his face in her hands. You're my son. And no matter what happens, I will always love you. Ichigo's tears started anew, but this time, they were quieter, less frantic. For the first time that evening, he felt a small glimmer of safety amidst the storm. Masaki stayed by Ichigo's side, holding him as he slowly began to calm down, her presence a steady anchor in his fragile world. After they got home and changed Ichigo into dry clothes, wrapping him in a warm blanket, Masaki noticed that his body felt unnaturally hot. His skin was feverish to the touch, and his breathing was uneven. She pressed her hand gently to his forehead, her concern growing by the second. Why is this happening? She whispered, brushing his hair back from his damp face. Ichigo stirred weakly, his hands trembling as he muttered in a broken voice, Mom. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Masaki's heart ached at the sight of him. Ichigo, it's okay, she said softly, though her voice trembled with worry. You're safe now. I'm here. She stood quickly, grabbing her phone and dialing Isshin's number. The line connected after a few rings, and she spoke urgently. Isshin, come home. Now. Masaki? His voice was laced with confusion. What's wrong? It's Ichigo. Something awakened in him, she said, glancing back at her son as he shivered under the blanket. A hollow attacked us, and he awakened some kind of power I've never seen before. His body's burning up. Isshin, it's serious. Isshin's tone shifted instantly. I'll be there right away. Don't let him out of your sight. Hanging up, Masaki knelt back beside Ichigo, her hands gently cradling his face. He was trembling, tears streaming down his cheeks as he muttered over and over, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Shoo, Ichigo, Masaki said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. You're not a monster, sweetheart. You saved me. But the blood. Ichigo stammered, his wide eyes staring at his hands as if they were foreign to him. I hurt him. I killed him. You protected me, Masaki said firmly, pulling him into her arms. You didn't do anything wrong. You're my brave boy, Ichigo. Minutes later, Isshin arrived, his usual carefree demeanor replaced with a rare seriousness. He took one look at Ichigo's trembling form and Masaki's worried expression before sitting beside them. Masaki, tell me everything, he said, his voice calm but commanding. She explained the events, recounting the Hollow's attack and how Ichigo had suddenly unleashed an incredible power, something raw and overwhelming. It wasn't normal Quincy powers, Isshin, she said, her voice low. It felt primal. Like something deep inside him broke free. Isshin's expression darkened as he placed a hand on Ichigo's forehead. His spiritual energy is unstable, he muttered. Whatever awakened in him. It's too much for his body to handle right now. Isshin, Masaki said, her voice shaking slightly. He's scared. He thinks he's a monster. We have to help him. Isshin looked at his wife, then at his son, who was still trembling in her arms. He nodded, determination hardening his gaze. We will, he said. No matter what it takes. As Masaki held Ichigo close, gently rocking him to calm his trembling, Isshin began working on stabilizing his son's spiritual energy. Both parents knew this was just the beginning of a long road ahead, but they were determined to stand by their son and help him face whatever lay ahead. As Ichigo continued to mutter apologies in a broken, trembling voice, Masaki held him tightly, her hand gently stroking his hair. His tears soaked into her shoulder, and her heart broke for him. She looked up at Isshin, desperation in her eyes. Isshin, he's not stopping. He's so scared. We need to do something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Isshin nodded, his face uncharacteristically serious. I know. I'll get him something to help him sleep. He needs rest, or his body won't recover from the strain of whatever awakened in him. Masaki hesitated, looking down at Ichigo, who clung to her like a lifeline. Will it be okay? I don't want to force him into anything. It's better than letting him spiral like this, Isshin replied, his tone firm but gentle. Trust me, Masaki. He'll be all right. As Isshin left the room, Masaki continued to whisper soothing words to Ichigo, though he barely seemed to hear her. His muttering grew softer, but the pain and fear in his voice remained. A few minutes later, Isshin returned with a small vial of medicine. He knelt beside Masaki and Ichigo, carefully pouring the liquid into a glass of water. Here, Isshin said, his voice soft as he handed it to Masaki. It's a mild sedative. It'll help him sleep and give his body a chance to recover. Masaki gently coaxed Ichigo to drink the water, her voice steady and reassuring. It's okay, sweetheart. Just drink this for me. It'll help you feel better. Ichigo hesitated, his tear-filled eyes meeting hers. Mom. I don't want to hurt anyone. You won't, Ichigo, Masaki said, her voice firm but warm. You're not a monster. You're my son. My brave, kind boy. Trust me, everything will be okay. After a moment, Ichigo nodded weakly and drank the water. Within minutes, his body began to relax as the medicine took effect. His muttering faded, and his breathing evened out as he finally drifted into a deep sleep. Isshin placed a hand on Masaki's shoulder. He'll be okay, Masaki. His body just needs time to adjust to the strain. Give it 2 or 3 days, and he'll be back to himself. Masaki nodded, her gaze fixed on Ichigo's peaceful but pale face. Thank you, Isshin. I hate seeing him like this. Isshin sighed, sitting beside her. I know. But he's strong. He gets that from you, you know. Masaki managed a small smile, brushing her fingers through Ichigo's hair. And maybe a little from you. The two sat in silence for a while, watching over their son as he slept, both silently vowing to protect him from whatever challenges lay ahead. Isshin returned to the room with a small tray carrying medicine and a glass of water. Setting it down on the bedside table, he glanced at Masaki, who was still holding Ichigo's hand. Her worried expression hadn't eased, and her eyes shimmered faintly with unshed tears. He crouched down beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. His tone was calm yet earnest as he spoke. Masaki, you should be proud. I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart. If you hadn't been here, if something had happened to you tonight, this family wouldn't have been the same. Everything would have fallen apart. Masaki turned to look at him, her lips trembling slightly. But Ishin, what if something worse happens? He's just a child, and tonight he had to save me. He shouldn't have to carry that burden. Ishin gave her a reassuring smile, though his voice carried a weight of seriousness. Remember what Ryukin said when Ichigo was born? He called him a miracle. And he was right. Ichigo's not just a miracle for this family, he's your miracle, Masaki. Tonight, he didn't just save himself. He saved you, too. He saved his mother, and my wife. You're the heart of this family. Without you, Masaki, we'd all be lost. The kids need you. I need you. And tonight, Ichigo proved just how much he needs you, too. Masaki's grip on Ichigo's hand tightened as tears began to spill down her cheeks. I just don't want him to grow up thinking he has to protect everyone, Ishin. He's still so little. I know, Ishin said, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. And we'll make sure he doesn't carry this alone. But you have to see the strength he showed tonight. That's you in him, Masaki. That's your resilience, your spirit. He's going to be okay because he has you and me to guide him. Masaki looked back at Ichigo, his face pale but peaceful as he slept. Her heart ached for her son, but Ishin's words gave her a sliver of hope. She wiped her tears and nodded, her resolve hardening. You're right. He is a miracle. And we'll make sure he never forgets that. Ishin leaned closer, kissing the top of her head before standing. That's the Masaki I know. Now, let's focus on helping our miracle rest and recover. The rest, we'll figure out together. Masaki gave him a small, grateful smile as she continued to watch over Ichigo, her heart swelling with both worry and pride. Ishin gently squeezed Masaki's shoulder, offering her a warm smile as he stood up. Go wash your face, Masaki. You don't want Yuzu and Karen to see you like this, all teary-eyed and worried. You know how sensitive they are, especially Yuzu. She'll start crying the moment she sees you like this. Masaki hesitated for a moment, still clutching Ichigo's small hand, but Ishin's words made sense. She slowly nodded, brushing her thumb over Ichigo's knuckles one last time before letting go. And while you're at it, Ishin continued, walking toward the door, why don't you make some porridge for Ichigo? He's going to need to eat something before he can take these medicines. Masaki glanced back at Ichigo, her expression softening. You're right. He hasn't eaten since before all this happened, and he'll need something warm in his stomach. Ishin grinned, his usual playful demeanor slipping through the serious moment. Of course I'm right. I'm not just a pretty face, you know. I'm also a genius when it comes to taking care of our family. Masaki rolled her eyes, but there was a small smile tugging at her lips. Genius or not, keep an eye on him while I'm gone, Ishin. If his fever spikes or he wakes up, call me right away. Ishin gave her a mock salute, his grin widening. Yes, ma'am. Captain Masaki, I'll guard the little guy with my life. Shaking her head but feeling a bit lighter, Masaki stepped out of the room to freshen up and head to the kitchen. As she walked down the hall, she took a deep breath, trying to push aside her worries. Ishin's words echoed in her mind, reminding her of the strength her son had shown and the love that bound their family together. As Ishin sat by Ichigo's bed, the room was silent except for the faint sounds of Masaki moving around in the kitchen. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. His gaze lingered on Ichigo's pale face, his chest rising and falling steadily. Ishin let out a deep sigh, his usual playful mask slipping away as the weight of the day caught up to him. His hands trembled slightly as he covered his face, and then he did something he hadn't done in years. He cried. Quietly, at first, tears rolling down his cheeks, but soon his shoulders shook with the depth of his emotions. Thank you, he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking. Thank you, Ichigo, for saving Masaki. I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost her today. He wiped at his tears roughly, as though trying to will them away, but they kept coming. His family was his everything, and seeing Masaki so shaken, hearing the fear in her voice as she recounted the events, had been almost too much to bear. Isshin looked at Ichigo again, his son's small hand barely visible under the blanket. You're just a kid, and yet you've already done so much. More than I could have asked for. You protected your mom, even though it scared you half to death. You're amazing, Ichigo. Truly. He leaned back, staring up at the ceiling, trying to compose himself. I have to be strong for them, though, he muttered to himself, his voice steadier now. Masaki doesn't need to see me like this. She's already worried enough. I'll put on the brave face, just like always. For her. For the girls. For you, too, kid. Isshin took a deep breath, wiping his face one last time before adjusting the blanket over Ichigo. His expression softened as he reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair away from Ichigo's face. Rest up, my boy. You've earned it. I'll be right here, keeping watch. He sat back in the chair, his emotions still raw but his resolve firm. Misaki's faint humming from the kitchen filtered into the room, a small reminder of the life they'd built together, a life worth protecting, no matter the cost. The house was quiet, save for the rhythmic ticking of the clock in the living room. Ichigo sat on the couch, knees drawn to his chest, a vacant look in his crimson eyes. His jet-black hair hung loosely over his face, further shadowing his expression. His younger sisters, Yuzu and Karen, sat on either side of him, their small hands gripping his sleeves as if trying to anchor him back to reality. Ichigo and I, Yuzu whispered, her voice trembling, are you okay? Ichigo didn't respond immediately. His hands, trembling faintly, clutched a cup of lukewarm tea Yuzu had brought him earlier. His pale face looked haunted, his crimson eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and confusion. Karen, ever the blunt one, nudged him slightly. Hey, snap out of it. You're scaring Yuzu. What happened back there? Ichigo blinked, his lips parting as if to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He had been muttering apologies for hours after the incident, his voice broken and hoarse, but now he was silent. The horrifying image of the events replayed relentlessly in his mind. Sorry, he finally managed, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry. Karen frowned, exchanging a worried glance with Yuzu. You keep saying that, but what are you apologizing for? Before Ichigo could attempt an answer, Masaki entered the room, a determined look on her face. She had just finished changing him into clean clothes earlier, her heart breaking at how small and fragile he seemed despite his usual fiery personality. Yuzu, Karen, Masaki said gently but firmly, why don't you two go upstairs and play for a while? I need to talk to your brother. But, Yuzu began, her big, tearful eyes darting to Ichigo. No buts, Masaki interrupted softly, giving her a reassuring smile. I promise, Ichigo will be okay. Right, Ichigo? Ichigo didn't look up, but he nodded weakly. Reluctantly, the two girls shuffled upstairs, glancing back at their brother as they disappeared around the corner. Masaki sat down beside Ichigo, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She could feel the tension in his small body, the way he flinched at even the slightest movement. Sweetheart, Masaki began, her voice warm and soothing, I know today was a lot. But you're not a monster, okay? You're my son. Nothing will ever change that. Ichigo shook his head, fresh tears spilling down his crimson eyes. I heard something. Someone. I killed it, Mom. That hollow. It was alive, and his words dissolved into sobs. Masaki pulled him closer, cradling his head against her chest. Ichigo, listen to me. That hollow wasn't an innocent creature. It was dangerous. It wanted to hurt us, and you protected me. Do you understand? You saved me. But it felt so wrong, Ichigo whispered, his voice muffled. When that voice took over, I wasn't in control. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. It was like something else inside me wanted it dead no matter what. Masaki's eyes softened with a mixture of pride and worry. She had seen the red and black energy that had enveloped her son during the fight, the Quincy bow he had conjured, unlike anything she had ever witnessed. It was raw, untamed, and terrifying. You're strong, Ichigo, she said gently, brushing his hair back. Stronger than you realize. But strength can be scary when it first shows itself. That's why we're going to figure this out together, okay? You're not alone. Ichigo sniffled, nodding slightly. Okay. Good, Masaki said with a warm smile, pressing a kiss to his forehead. Now, I need to go out for a little while. I'm going to talk to someone who can help us understand what's happening to you. Ichigo tensed. You're leaving? Just for a little bit, Masaki reassured him. Your dad will be here if you need anything. And I promise, I'll be back soon. Ichigo hesitated but eventually nodded. Okay. After making sure he was settled with a blanket and some water, Masaki stood and grabbed her coat. She gave Isshin a quick rundown of what had happened and instructed him to keep an eye on Ichigo before heading out into the cold, rainy evening. The drive to Ryukin Ishida's hospital was a quiet one, the rain pattering against the windshield. Masaki's thoughts raced as she replayed the events of the day. She trusted Ryukin's expertise, not just as a Quincy but as someone who understood the complexities of their unique lineage. When she arrived, Ryukin was already waiting for her in his office, his expression calm and composed. Masaki, he greeted, gesturing for her to sit. This must be serious if you're here at this hour. Masaki wasted no time. It's about Ichigo. He awakened his powers today, Quincy powers. But there's more to it than that. Ryukin raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. Go on. She explained everything, from the hollow attack to the voice Ichigo had described, to the raw, destructive energy he had unleashed. As she spoke, Ryukin's expression shifted from mild curiosity to deep concern. And you're sure it wasn't just a standard Quincy awakening? He asked. Masaki shook her head. No. This was different. The power he used. It didn't feel entirely like ours. It was darker, more primal. And it wasn't just the power, there was a voice. It called him, my son. Ryukin's fingers tapped thoughtfully on the desk. A voice, you say? That complicates things. It's possible that Ichigo's powers are layered. His heritage is more complex than most, given your circumstances and Isshin's history. I don't care how complex it is, Masaki said firmly. I just want to make sure he's okay. He's only 9, Ryukin. He shouldn't have to deal with this kind of burden yet. Ryukin nodded, his gaze softening slightly. I'll do what I can to help. But you need to prepare yourself, Masaki. Ichigo's path won't be an easy one. With powers like these, he'll face challenges most people can't even imagine. Masaki's jaw tightened, her resolve unwavering. He's strong, Ryukin. And he has us to support him. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Back at home, Isshin sat near Ichigo, watching his son sleep fitfully on the couch. His usually carefree demeanor was replaced with rare seriousness. I don't know what you're going through, kid, Isshin murmured softly, brushing a hand through Ichigo's black hair. But you're not alone in this. Your mom and I won't let anything happen to you. As the rain outside eased into a gentle drizzle, the Kurosaki household settled into an uneasy quiet, each member silently preparing for the trials that lay ahead. The night air was crisp, the rain having finally subsided into a light drizzle. Isshin Kurosaki, dressed in a simple black coat, made his way through the dimly lit streets of Karakura town. His usual goofy demeanor was absent, instead, a grim determination shadowed his face. The events surrounding Ichigo's sudden awakening of powers had left him unsettled, and there was only one person he trusted to help unravel the mystery: Kisuke Urahara. The jingling bell above the door of Urahara's shop echoed through the otherwise quiet street as Isshin stepped inside. The shop smelled faintly of incense and old wood, and as usual, the place was cluttered with boxes and random trinkets. Tessai Tsukabushi was behind the counter, wiping down a teacup when he looked up and greeted Isshin with a polite nod. "Isshin-san, it's been a while," Tessai said, setting the cup down. "Yeah," Isshin replied, waving a hand dismissively. "Where's Kisuke? I need to talk to him, urgent stuff." Tessai nodded knowingly. "He's in the back. I'll let him know you're here." Before Tessai could leave, a familiar voice called out from the storage room. "No need, Tessai. I heard him the moment he stepped in. Who else stomps around so loudly, huh, Isshin?" Kisuke Urahara emerged from the back, his trademark striped hat tilted forward and a sly grin on his face. Isshin crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. "This isn't the time for jokes, Kisuke. We've got a situation." Kisuke's grin faltered slightly as he studied Isshin's expression. He gestured toward the seating area with his fan. "Well then, why don't you come in and tell me what's going on?" The two men sat across from each other in the back room, a low table between them. Kisuke poured tea, his movements unusually measured. "So," Kisuke began, leaning back and fanning himself lazily, "what's got you so worked up? I don't think I've seen you this serious since." He trailed off, letting the silence fill in the rest. Isshin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's about Ichigo. Something happened today." Kisuke's eyes narrowed slightly, the fan pausing mid-air. "Go on." "There was a hollow attack," Isshin began, his voice low. "Masaki and Ichigo were out in the rain. The hollow targeted them, attempting to lure them in, but Ichigo awakened his Quincy powers." Kisuke tilted his head thoughtfully, noting, "Awakened them, you say? I thought his Quincy heritage was dormant." Isshin admitted, "That's what I thought too, but this was different. It wasn't just his Quincy powers, it was something darker. Masaki said the energy was unstable, red and black, nothing like the traditional Quincy ratio. And there was a voice, Kisuke. A voice that called him, my son." Kisuke's normally casual expression shifted to something more serious. "A voice? That's troubling." He set his fan down, steepling his fingers. "Did Masaki recognize it?" Isshin shook his head. "No, but it scared her. And Ichigo, he's shaken up. He's been muttering apologies all night, saying he's a monster. He's just a kid, Kisuke. He shouldn't have to deal with this." Kisuke leaned forward, resting his chin on his hands. "It sounds like Ichigo's powers aren't just Quincy in nature. If I had to guess, I'd say we're dealing with some kind of fusion emerging of his Quincy and Shinigami bloodlines." Isshin frowned. "But why now? He's only 9. Shouldn't these powers have stayed dormant until he was older?" "Normally, yes," Kisuke replied. "But an extreme emotional or physical trigger can awaken latent powers. The hollow attack might have been the catalyst. And if there's a voice involved..." He trailed off, his gaze growing distant. "You're thinking it's Yawatch, aren't you?" Isshin said bluntly. Kisuke didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for his tea, taking a slow sip before setting the cup down. "It's a possibility. Yawatch's connection to all Quincy is unique, to say the least. If Ichigo's powers are awakening, it's not far-fetched to think Yawatch might be involved, even indirectly." Isshin clenched his fists. "I thought we were done with this when I left Soul Society. I just wanted my kids to have a normal life." Kisuke's eyes softened slightly. "You've always known that wouldn't be possible, Isshin. Not with Ichigo's heritage. But this isn't the end of the world. It's a new chapter, sure, but it doesn't have to be a bad one." Isshin leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Masaki went to see Ryukin for his take on things. But I need you to figure out how we're going to handle this. If Ichigo's powers are waking up, we need to ensure he can control them. And more importantly, we need to protect him from whatever's trying to influence him. Kisuke nodded, his mind already working through possibilities. I'll start working on a containment method. Something that can suppress his powers until he's ready to handle them. In the meantime, I'd suggest keeping an eye on him. If the voice tries to contact him again, we need to know what it says. I'll do whatever it takes, Isshin said firmly. I just want my son to be safe. Kisuke smiled faintly. And he will be, Isshin. We'll figure this out together. As Isshin prepared to leave, the sound of playful chatter caught his attention. Jinta and Yururu peeked out from the other room, their eyes wide with curiosity. Who's the guy with the grumpy face? Jinta whispered loudly to Yururu. I think he's a customer, Yururu replied quietly. Kisuke chuckled, waving them off. Back to work, you two. No spying on important conversations. Isshin shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips despite the weight on his shoulders. You've got quite the setup here, Kisuke. Just don't forget that you owe me for all the trouble you caused back in the day. Kisuke smirked, tipping his hat. Wouldn't dream of it. Give my regards to Masaki and the kids. Isshin nodded, stepping out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped completely, and the stars were beginning to peek through the clouds. As he walked home, his thoughts were consumed by one thing, Ichigo's future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was determined to face them head-on for his son's sake. The next day dawned with a soft glow, sunlight spilling into the Kurosaki household as Masaki prepared to take Ichigo to Ryuken's clinic. Ichigo, still recovering from the events of the past few days, seemed hesitant but compliant. Masaki noticed the slight droop in his shoulders and the way his crimson eyes avoided hers, still burdened by everything he had gone through. Come on, Ichigo, Masaki said gently, placing a reassuring hand on his back. It'll be all right. We just need to figure out what's happening with your powers. Ryuken might have some answers. Ichigo gave a small nod, his voice barely above a whisper. All right, Mom. The two walked to Ryuken's private clinic, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Masaki kept a protective arm around her son as they entered the pristine facility. Ryuken, ever the stoic, was waiting for them in his office, his sharp gaze scanning Ichigo as they approached. Masaki, Ryuken greeted with a curt nod before his eyes flicked to Ichigo. So, this is the boy who's awakened his Quincy powers. Masaki gave him a look that warned against any sharp comments. Yes, Ryuken. He's still adjusting, so go easy on him. Ryuken ignored the remark, his attention fully on Ichigo now. Come here, boy. Ichigo hesitated but stepped forward. Ryuken's analytical gaze swept over him, and his eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting. His spiritual pressure is unusually high for someone his age. Masaki, this is beyond typical Quincy potential. What do you mean? Masaki asked, concern lacing her voice. His body is unconsciously absorbing and releasing reassurance at an alarming rate, Ryuken said, walking over to a nearby cabinet. He retrieved a Quincy cross and several other artifacts, laying them out on a table. It's like his very existence is attuned to the spiritual world. This level of racial manipulation is unheard of in someone so young. As Ryuken spoke, Ichigo suddenly stumbled, his body trembling. Crimson energy flared around him, pulsating wildly and causing the air in the room to hum with power. Ichigo. Masaki caught him as he swayed, her arms wrapping protectively around him. He's releasing reassurance uncontrollably, Ryuken muttered, his voice sharp. Put him on the table. Quickly. Masaki did as instructed. Gently laying Ichigo on the examination table. His breathing was uneven, and his crimson eyes fluttered shut as his body continued to radiate an immense amount of energy. The light from his spiritual pressure cast eerie shadows across the room. This isn't just Quincy power, Ryukin murmured as he activated a device to measure the erasure levels. The reading spiked off the charts. This boy. He's something else entirely. It's as if he's pulling energy from every corner of the room without even trying. Can you help him? Masaki's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her worry. I can stabilize him, Ryukin said, retrieving a quincy glove and a vial of spiritual suppressant. But it's only a temporary solution. He needs to learn control, or his powers will consume him. As Ryukin placed the quincy cross in Ichigo's hand, the energy around him shifted, drawn into the artifact. The cross glowed faintly, stabilizing the chaotic flow of erasure. Ichigo's breathing evened out, and his body relaxed, though his eyes remained closed. Ryukin stepped back, stating that this should keep Ichigo stable for now, but emphasized that he needed serious training. Masaki nodded, brushing a strand of hair from Ichigo's face, determined to do whatever it took for her son. Ryukin's expression softened briefly before returning to his usual stoicism. He acknowledged the challenges ahead but believed that Masaki and he could guide Ichigo. Masaki's jaw tightened at Ryukin's words as she placed a hand over Ichigo's, where the quincy cross rested, its glow subdued but steady. She understood the risks involved, noting that if Ichigo's power continued to grow unchecked, it would attract unwanted attention from both the Soul Society and those who viewed quincies as a threat. Ryukin crossed his arms, his silver gaze calculating. He explained that the Soul Society does not tolerate anomalies, especially one like Ichigo. If they deemed him a danger, they would come for him. Certain individuals within the Soul Society might also exploit his powers for their own purposes. Masaki exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the situation. She couldn't allow her son, still just a child, to bear the burden of power he never asked for. Ryukin's voice softened slightly as he reminded her of the dangers of being a quincy. He noted that Ichigo was different, stronger, with unique erasure. If he learned to control it, he could protect himself from those who would harm him. Masaki's eyes flashed with determination. She vowed to ensure Ichigo received the training he needed and would not let anyone use him as a pawn. Ryukin retrieved an ornate box from a cabinet and placed it on the table, revealing Quincy relics, training tools, artifacts that enhance control, and the traditional Quincy glove. Masaki expressed her gratitude and asked how to keep the Soul Society from discovering Ichigo. Ryukin adjusted his glasses, his expression grim, explaining that Ichigo's power was still mostly contained, but any outburst could alert the Soul Society. She would need to teach him how to suppress his erasure when not in use, a challenging but essential task for his survival. Masaki's resolve remained unwavering as she promised to teach Ichigo. If the Soul Society came, they would have to go through her first. Ryukin smirked, reminding her not to let her emotions cloud her judgment. Ichigo needed discipline, not coddling. Masaki shot him a sharp look, asserting that she knew how to protect her son. Ryukin raised his hands in mock surrender, cautioning her that Ichigo's powers were both a blessing and a curse. If he mastered them, he would be nearly unstoppable, if not, the consequences could be dire. Masaki straightened, her gaze fierce, declaring that Ichigo would master his powers. Ryukin nodded, urging her to get started and reminding her that Ichigo's lineage tied him to more than just their kind. Whatever he awakened that night was only the beginning. Masaki glanced at her unconscious son, the weight of Ryukin's words settling heavily on her. Pushing aside her fear, she focused on her love and determination. She promised to protect him, picking up the box of Quincy relics as she left Ryukin's clinic, whispering to herself that Ichigo was stronger than he knew and that she would be by his side every step of the way. The soft hum of Ichigo's erasure followed her, a reminder of the challenges ahead. The next day, the afternoon sun hung low in the sky as Ichigo trudged through the streets, his hands shoved deep into his pockets and an annoyed scowl on his face. His crimson eyes darted toward Isshin, who walked a few paces ahead with an uncharacteristic bounce in his step. The older man had practically dragged Ichigo out of the house earlier. "Dad, I just got back from Ryukin's place yesterday," Ichigo muttered, frustration evident in his voice. "Do you really think this is a good idea?" I'm still trying to figure out how to keep my racial under control, and now you want me to deal with your friends? Isshin stopped abruptly, turning to face his son with a wide grin. He insisted that Kisuke was a genius and that Ichigo should be thankful for the introduction. Ichigo rolled his eyes, expressing his distrust of Kisuke's intentions. Isshin dismissed his concerns, claiming Ichigo would learn to appreciate him, especially since Yoruchi might be there too. That's not the point. Ichigo snapped. I've already spent hours at Ryuken's place learning how to use Quincy artifacts. I don't need another lesson today. Stop complaining, Isshin replied, his tone suddenly serious. You've got a lot of power, Ichigo. If you don't learn to control it, you're putting everyone around you at risk, including Yuzu and Karen. The mention of his sisters made Ichigo pause, softening his scowl, though his frustration remained. He sighed and followed his father in silence, the weight of his responsibilities pressing heavily on him. They arrived at Urahara Shoten, the nondescript shop that served as Kisuke Urahara's base of operations. Ichigo hesitated at the entrance, instinct screaming at him to turn around. However, Isshin gave him a firm shove through the doorway. Ah, Isshin. And young Ichigo. Kisuke greeted them as he appeared from behind a stack of crates, his ever-present striped hat tilted jauntily. What a pleasant surprise. Pleasant for you, maybe, Ichigo muttered under his breath, crossing his arms defensively. Kisuke's sharp eyes gleamed with amusement as he acknowledged Ichigo's exploration of his Quincy heritage, offering to help him unlock more of his potential. Ichigo narrowed his gaze, insisting he wasn't there for an experiment. Kisuke feigned hurt, claiming everything he did was in the name of helping others, which Ichigo found hard to believe. Before Ichigo could respond, a black cat padded into the room, its golden eyes fixated on him. You've been busy, haven't you? Yoruchi's unmistakable voice caught Ichigo off guard. He froze, eyes widening in disbelief. She's also not really a cat. Ichigo's jaw dropped. Before he could process what was happening, Yoruchi leapt onto a nearby table and transformed into her human form. Ichigo's vision blurred, and he fainted, collapsing onto the floor. When Ichigo came to, he was lying on a tatami mat, staring up at a wooden ceiling. His head throbbed, and he groaned as he sat up. Kisuke and Yoruchi stood nearby, looking down at him with amused expressions. Welcome back, Yoruchi said, her voice teasing. Didn't think you'd faint at the sight of me. Ichigo glared at her, his cheeks flushing. You could have warned me. Kisuke chuckled, waving a fan lazily. It's always fun to see people's reactions. But enough of that, we've got work to do. Ichigo stomped out of the tatami room, frustration bubbling over. That's it. I'm calling Mom, he shouted, yanking open the door. The mention of Mom sent Isshin into a slight panic, while Kisuke and Yoruchi exchanged amused glances. Calm down, Ichigo, Isshin called after him. It's not that big a deal. It is a big deal. She just transformed without any warning. Ugh. Forget it. Ichigo fumed, quickly punching numbers into the house phone, his hands trembling slightly from embarrassment and irritation. Back at the Kurosaki household, Masaki was in the kitchen, humming a soft tune while preparing dinner. The phone rang, and she quickly wiped her hands on her apron before answering. Hello, Kurosaki residence, she greeted cheerfully. Mom. Ichigo's exasperated voice blared through the receiver. You won't believe what just happened. Dad dragged me to that weird shop again, and this time, Yoruchi turned into her human form right in front of me. No warning at all. There was a brief silence before Masaki's voice came through, now calm but firm. Is that so? Back at Urahara Shoten, Yoruchi leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed, a teasing smirk on her lips. You know, Ichigo has quite the imagination. I wasn't completely. Before she could finish, the shop door slammed open. Masaki stormed in, her warm demeanor replaced by an aura of authority. She held a frying pan in one hand, and her sharp gaze locked onto Yoruchi. "Masaki. My lovely wife." Ishin exclaimed, attempting to greet her with open arms. "This isn't what it." Wham! The frying pan connected squarely with Yoruchi's face, sending her sprawling to the floor. Yoruchi groaned from the ground, rubbing her forehead. "What the?" Masaki turned her glare on Ishin. "And you? You didn't think to warn our son?" Without missing a beat, she delivered a clean uppercut to Ishin, sending him flying into a pile of crates. "Masaki, darling. I can explain." Ishin wheezed, rubbing his jaw as he sat up. "Explain later," she snapped, crossing her arms as she stood over him. "Right now, you're going to apologize to Ichigo for this mess. And Yoruchi, you owe him an apology, too." Yoruchi, still on the floor, raised a hand weakly. "Fine, fine. I'll apologize." Ichigo stood in the doorway, watching the chaos unfold with a mix of satisfaction and embarrassment. "Thanks, Mom," he muttered, feeling slightly vindicated. Masaki turned to him, her expression softening. "Are you okay, Ichigo? You didn't let them drag you into anything too crazy, did you?" "I'm fine," he said, scratching the back of his head. "I just didn't expect that. Thanks for coming." She smiled warmly, patting his shoulder. "Of course, sweetie. I'll always have your back." Ishin groaned from his pile of crates. "Remind me to never underestimate you again, Masaki." "Good," Masaki said firmly. "Now, let's go home. And you," she pointed at Ishin, "are cooking dinner tonight." "Yes, ma'am." Ishin muttered, defeated, as he picked himself up. Ichigo smirked slightly, feeling a small sense of victory as he followed his mom out of the shop. Yoruchi, still rubbing her forehead, called after him. "You're lucky your mom's scary, kid." Ichigo didn't reply, grateful that the storm had passed for now. Ichigo crossed his arms and leaned against the doorway, glaring at Yoruchi, who was still rubbing her face after being smacked by Masaki's pan. "If you were as fast as you claim, you wouldn't have ended up with a frying pan in your face. Seems like Mom's faster than you." The room went silent. Yoruchi froze mid-rub, lowering her hand from her forehead. Her golden eyes narrowed at Ichigo, an incredulous smile spreading across her lips. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" Masaki, standing nearby with the pan still in hand, raised an eyebrow but said nothing, her expression a mix of pride and amusement. Ichigo shrugged, keeping his voice casual but loaded with sass. "You heard me. You're supposed to be the goddess of flash, right? But you couldn't even dodge a frying pan. Mom's clearly faster." Ishin, seated in the corner nursing his own injuries, burst into laughter. "Oh, you've done it now, Ichigo. That's a risky move right there." Ichigo shot his father a glare. "You're not helping, old man." Yoruchi stood up slowly, cracking her knuckles, her smirk turning dangerous. "You know, for someone still figuring out how to walk and chew gum at the same time, you've got a big mouth, kid." Ichigo straightened up, his confidence wavering slightly. "I'm just stating facts. No need to take it personally." Masaki sighed, placing the pan on the counter. "Yoruchi, don't break him. He still has a lot of training to do." Yoruchi chuckled, stretching her arms. "Oh, don't worry, Masaki. I'm not going to break him. Just educate him." Ichigo raised his hands defensively. "Wait a second. Let's not get hasty here." But Yoruchi was already gone, her blurred form reappearing right in front of him. Before he could react, she flicked him on the forehead hard enough to make him stumble. Yoruchi smirked as she stepped back after flicking Ichigo's forehead. "See? A little humility goes a long way," she froze mid-sentence, her expression shifting to surprise as a shockwave of energy surged from the point of impact. It crackled, and her entire hand recoiled involuntarily. "What the?" Yoruchi gasped, shaking her hand as if to rid it of the unexpected sting. Her golden eyes narrowed in confusion, and she looked at her palm, which now had faint marks. That wasn't normal. Ichigo blinked, rubbing his forehead where she'd flicked him. Ow! What was that for weight? His voice trailed off as he noticed the faint shimmer of energy radiating from his skin. His eyes widened, panic creeping into his tone. What's going on? Why is my forehead glowing? Ichigo exclaimed, stepping back in surprise. Masaki moved closer, her expression filled with concern. Ichigo, calm down. She turned to Yoruchi, who was flexing her hand, looking slightly stunned. What did you do? I just flicked his forehead, Yoruchi replied, her tone serious. But whatever's inside him reacted. That erasure. It felt like Quincy blood, but mixed with something darker. Something dangerous. Isshin, who had been watching with growing unease, jumped to his feet. Blood? From a flick? Yoruchi, are you okay? He approached her, inspecting the faint marks on her hand. This isn't like him. That energy shouldn't be so volatile unless something triggered it. Ichigo's breathing became uneven as he tried to calm the surge of energy within him. I didn't mean to do anything. I don't even know how to control this yet. Masaki knelt in front of him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. Ichigo, it's okay. Just breathe. You're not in trouble. We're going to figure this out. Ichigo nodded shakily, his voice trembling as he said, what if I hurt someone? I can't control it. What if I hurt you, Mom? Masaki's expression softened, and she pulled him into a gentle hug. You won't, Ichigo. You're strong, and you'll learn to control it. You've already shown how much you care about protecting others. Yoruchi frowned, still eyeing Ichigo warily. That's no ordinary blood, Masaki. It's powerful and has a destructive edge. If he doesn't learn to control it soon, it could spiral out of control. Isshin sighed, running a hand through his hair. Looks like I really will have to take him to Kisuke's shop. This isn't something we can handle alone. Ichigo groaned, burying his face in his hands. Oh, great. More of Dad's weird friends. Just what I needed. Yoruchi smirked despite the situation. Weird or not, they might be the only ones who can help you figure out what's going on inside you. And maybe, she added with a pointed look, you'll learn not to underestimate me next time. Ichigo glared at her through his fingers. Yeah, well, maybe next time, warn me before flicking my forehead and setting off my weird powers. Masaki chuckled softly, ruffling his hair. Enough bickering, you two. Let's focus on getting this under control. Isshin nodded, his usual carefree demeanor replaced by seriousness. Time to pay Kisuke a visit. Whether Ichigo likes it or not. As Ichigo entered the underground training room with Kisuke, he was taken aback by the vastness of the space. The air was thick with spiritual energy, and the faint echoes of their footsteps filled the room. Kisuke, maintaining his calm demeanor, gestured toward Ichigo with his fan. All right, Ichigo, Kisuke said, folding the fan and tucking it away. Let's see what kind of Quincy powers you're hiding. We'll start with the basics, manifesting your rapier weapon. If you're anything like your mother, this should be entertaining. Ichigo crossed his arms, feeling annoyed. I didn't agree to this. And stop comparing me to Mom. She's faster than you, and you know it. Kisuke chuckled. I never denied it. But enough talk, let's get started. Ichigo sighed and extended his hand. Concentrating deeply, he began pulling in the ambient rapier from the room. The air around his palm shimmered, and slowly, a faint blue glow began to form. Kisuke watched intently as the glow sharpened and solidified into a sleek bow of rapier, its edges jagged yet precise. Not bad, Kisuke mused. But your form is sloppy. Try focusing your intent, Ichigo. The weapon should feel like an extension of yourself, not a tool you're forcing into shape. Ichigo scowled and tried again. This time, the bow took on a sleeker appearance, more refined and balanced. As he tested the weapon, he instinctively formed an arrow of dense red and black rapier, startling Kisuke. Interesting. That's not just Quincy rapier, Kisuke murmured, stepping closer. That mix of colors, it's hollow and Shinigami energy blending with your Quincy powers. A rare combination. Ichigo fired the arrow into a nearby boulder, shattering it into dust. The force of the attack reverberated through the room, leaving Kisuke impressed. Looks like Yawatch left you a little gift, he said. Yeah, and that gift has been nagging me to train, Ichigo replied, rolling his shoulders. Then let's test it further, Kisuke said, suddenly appearing behind Ichigo and swinging Benihime. Ichigo barely had time to react, raising his bow as a shield. The clash sent a shockwave through the room, but Ichigo stood firm, his rapier shield holding against the blade. Kisuke grinned. Good instincts, but can you handle this? With a flick of his wrist, he sent a barrage of energy slashes toward Ichigo. Instinctively, Ichigo activated Blood Vene, his veins glowing faintly beneath his skin. He dashed forward with newfound speed, dodging the slashes and countering with a series of rapier arrows. The arrows curved mid-air, homing in on Kisuke, who barely managed to dodge. Blood Vene and rapier manipulation impressive for your first time showing off, Kisuke remarked, landing a few feet away. I'm not done yet, Ichigo said, his bow dissipating as he summoned a thin, sword-like weapon made entirely of rapier. Kisuke's eyes narrowed. A rapier blade? Now things are getting interesting. Ichigo charged forward, engaging Kisuke in a high-speed clash. Each strike of the rapier blade sent sparks flying, the mixture of Quincy and hollow energy pushing Kisuke back slightly. Alright, Ichigo, Kisuke said, blocking a particularly heavy strike. You've got raw power, but you're still holding back. Why not show me what that black and red rapier is really capable of? Ichigo stood in the middle of Kisuke's underground training room, his fists clenched as red and black rapier swirled around him. The energy radiating from him felt wild, almost uncontrollable, as he struggled to keep it from tearing the room apart. Kisuke stood at a safe distance, observing carefully. Not bad, Ichigo. That blend of rapier. It's uniquely yours. But right now, it's like an untamed beast. Let's see if you can control it. Ichigo gritted his teeth. Sweat dripping from his forehead as he tried to focus the energy. Easier said than done, he shouted, moving his hand forward. A condensed blast of red and black energy shot out, but it veered off course and slammed into the wall, creating a massive crater. Kisuke raised an eyebrow. You're leaking too much energy. You need to focus on compression, not just output. Otherwise, you'll waste more rapier than you'll actually use in battle. Compression? Ichigo growled. I'm barely holding this together. Kisuke sighed, adjusting his hat. Alright, let's take it step by step. First, focus on stabilizing the rapier around your hands. Visualize the energy as an extension of your body, control it like you'd control your own movements. Ichigo closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. The red and black rapier around him began to settle, flowing more evenly around his arms and hands. Slowly, the chaotic storm of energy began to take shape, forming a dense, fiery aura around Ichigo's fists. Kisuke observed with a hint of approval in his voice as he encouraged Ichigo to test his control. Now, let's see if you can focus that energy into a precise strike. Ichigo's eyes widened in surprise. What? Don't hold back, Kisuke urged, his expression serious. If you can concentrate the rapier into a single strike, you'll know you're on the right track. Ichigo hesitated for a moment but then nodded. Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you. He charged forward, the rapier around his fists flaring up. As he closed the distance, he threw a punch with all his strength. The red and black energy surged toward Kisuke, leaving a fiery trail in its wake. Kisuke raised Benihime to block the punch. The impact sent a shockwave through the room, but Kisuke remained steady, his blade glowing faintly as it absorbed some of the force. "Not bad," Kisuke said, stepping back. "The energy was focused, but it's still too raw. You're putting too much power into the attack without enough precision. Try again." Frustration was evident on Ichigo's face. "This is harder than it looks." "Of course it is," Kisuke replied. "If it were easy, you'd already be a master. Now stop complaining and focus." Taking a deep breath, Ichigo adjusted his stance. This time, he visualized the energy as a tightly coiled spring, ready to release its power in a controlled burst. He lunged forward again, his fist glowing brighter with condensed racier. When the punch connected with Kisuke's blade, the shockwave was smaller, but the force was far more concentrated. Kisuke was pushed back slightly, his eyes narrowing in approval. "Better," he said, lowering his blade. "You're starting to get it. Now, let's see how well you can maintain that control in a real fight." Ichigo wiped the sweat from his brow, determination in his eyes. "Bring it on." As the faint crimson and ebony racier dissipated from his hands, Ichigo spoke up. "There's something else, Kisuke," he began, flexing his fingers as though remembering a sensation. "One day, while training on my own, something unusual happened." Kisuke tilted his head, intrigued. "Unusual, you say? Do tell." Ichigo raised his hands, motioning as though donning invisible gauntlets. "I unlocked something. These gauntlets appeared on my hands. They felt alive, like they were drawing from my very soul. I think it's connected to what you call fullbring." Kisuke's eyes widened, his hand moving to his chin. "Fullbring? That's an interesting twist, Ichigo. Those powers draw from the essence of a soul connected to the physical world, an extension of your humanity. But I never thought you would manifest it so strongly, considering your lineage." Ichigo shrugged, glancing at his hands. "It wasn't intentional. I was training, and suddenly, these gauntlets formed. They were intricate, almost like armor, and the power was incredible, but I couldn't control it." Kisuke chuckled, his hat tilted downward. "Ichigo, control seems to be your eternal nemesis, doesn't it?" Ichigo groaned but continued. "Yeah, but listen. My Quincy powers. I've got Ryukin-san for that. He's been helping me understand how to control and channel my racier better. What I need from you is different." He stepped closer, determination burning in his eyes. "I need you to help me unlock my Soul Reaper powers again. Fully. Completely." Kisuke's demeanor shifted, his playful grin replaced by a serious expression. "That's quite a tall order, Ichigo. Your Soul Reaper powers were unique, tied directly to your Hollow and Quincy sides. Unlocking them won't be straightforward." Ichigo crossed his arms. "I know that. But if anyone can figure it out, it's you. Besides, I've been reading." He glanced toward the corner of the room where Yururu and Jinta were awkwardly pretending not to eavesdrop. "I found this book that mentioned something about the Godii 13, the original one. It made me think. If they were so powerful, maybe there's something about their methods that could help me." Kisuke raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "The original Godii 13, huh? That's a name that carries a lot of weight. Why would you be interested in them?" Ichigo clenched his fists. "Because if they were the strongest, then I need to learn from their legacy. I can't afford to hold back anymore, Kisuke. Not with everything that's coming." Kisuke nodded slowly, a sly grin creeping back onto his face. "All right, Ichigo. You've convinced me. Let's start with your fullbring powers and see if we can bridge the gap to your Soul Reaper abilities. And as for the Godii, I might have some old scrolls that could shed light on their ways." Ichigo smirked. "Good. Let's get started." Yururu peeked out from her hiding spot. "Are you sure about this, Ichigo? Those original Godii, they weren't like the captains we know." "Monsters," Jinta finished, a hint of fear in his voice. Ichigo turned to them, his expression unwavering. Then I'll learn to fight like a monster. If that's what it takes to protect the people I care about. The vast expanse of Kisuke's underground training area thrummed with intense spiritual energy. Dust particles hung in the air, suspended amidst a swirling storm of reassurance drawn toward Ichigo, who stood firm, breathing steadily as he prepared for the next phase of his training. Across from him, Kisuke observed with a faint smile, his Zanpakuto resting against his shoulder, his striped hat concealing the sharper glint in his eyes. "I see you've been busy, Ichigo," Kisuke said, amusement lacing his tone. "Full-bring powers, huh? This should be interesting. Let's see what you've got." Ichigo nodded silently, his eyes narrowing in focus as he clenched his fists. The reassurance in the atmosphere thickened, drawn toward him as a surge of red and black energy coalesced around his hands. The light grew blinding for a moment before it subsided, revealing ornate gauntlets adorning his forearms. Their design was a blend of celestial elegance and raw power, resembling angelic wings fused seamlessly with intricate armor. Kisuke raised an eyebrow. "Well, now. That's quite the look." Ichigo wasted no time, surging forward with newfound speed. His first punch released a shockwave that tore through the ground, shattering rocks and sending debris flying in every direction. Kisuke sidestepped gracefully, his smirk widening as he noted the sheer force behind the strike. "Not bad," Kisuke admitted, spinning his Zanpakuto in a lazy arc, "but raw strength won't get you very far." Ichigo responded by raising his gauntlets, channeling energy into their core. Crimson and black reassurance bolts materialized, shooting forth with precision. Each projectile left glowing streaks in the air, forcing Kisuke to weave through them with nimble footwork. He commented on Ichigo's improvement in control, vanishing in a flash step and reappearing behind him with his blade poised to strike. However, Ichigo was ready, the wing-like extensions of his gauntlets unfurled, forming a shimmering barrier of pure reassurance. The strike collided with the shield, sending a pulse of energy rippling outward. Ichigo gritted his teeth, holding his ground as the barrier absorbed the impact. "Nice trick," Kisuke remarked, stepping back and lowering his blade. "But you'll need to push harder if you want to keep up." Ichigo's fists tightened as he felt the limits of his current power, but the drive to grow stronger burned brighter within him. "This isn't enough. I need more," he growled. Suddenly, a surge of energy erupted from Ichigo, causing the cavern to tremble beneath its intensity. The gauntlets on his arms began to morph, their glow intensifying as the light enveloped his entire body. When the transformation completed, Ichigo stood clad in radiant white armor, resembling a knight descended from the heavens. Ethereal wings sprouted from his back, shimmering with spiritual energy. In his hand, a sword of pure light materialized, humming with immense power. Kisuke's eyes gleamed with curiosity. "Now this is interesting. Show me what you can do with it." Ichigo didn't hesitate, in a single swing of his luminous blade, he unleashed an arc of energy so bright it illuminated the entire cavern. The slash extended for miles, splitting the rocky ceiling as Kisuke barely managed to dodge in time. "Careful now, Ichigo," Kisuke teased, landing a safe distance away. "You're liable to bring this whole place down." Ichigo followed up with a flurry of slashes, each leaving glowing trails in the air. The patterns hung suspended for a heartbeat before detonating simultaneously, the radiant explosion shaking the ground and forcing Kisuke to shield himself from the shockwave. "Not bad at all," Kisuke admitted, dusting off his Haori. "But let's see how you handle this." He retaliated with a blast of concentrated spiritual energy, the force barreling toward Ichigo like a tidal wave. Ichigo raised his sword, the shimmering wings on his back unfurling to their full span. The armor's reassurance shifted, forming a protective barrier that absorbed the blast entirely. "You're going to have to try harder than that, Kisuke," Ichigo shouted, dashing forward at blinding speed. As their clash reached its peak, Ichigo's energy surged to its absolute limit. The air shimmered, charged with the combined might of his Shinigami, Quincy, Hollow, and Fullbringer powers. His blade began to glow with alternating hues of black and gold, a perfect representation of the harmony he had achieved within himself. This is my power now. Ichigo roared, raising the sword high. In an instant, he vanished, reappearing behind Kisuke in a blur of motion. The blade sliced through the air, its swing clean and decisive. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a massive scar of energy erupted behind Kisuke, detonating in a radiant explosion that illuminated the entire cavern like a second sun. As the dust settled, Kisuke stood a distance away, unfazed but clearly impressed. He adjusted his hat, a sly grin playing on his lips. Well done, Ichigo. You've managed to create something truly unique. But don't let it get to your head you're not done yet. Ichigo lowered his sword, his chest heaving with exertion. A small smirk crossed his face as he met Kisuke's gaze. I wouldn't expect anything less, Kisuke. As the dust began to settle and the racier storm calmed, Kisuke adjusted his hat and gave a satisfied nod. Well, Ichigo, I'd say you've done enough damage to my training ground for one day. We'll call it a session. Besides, Kisuke chuckled, if you don't head home soon, Masaki might show up here, and trust me, I don't feel like getting scolded again today. That woman is tougher than most captains. Ichigo relaxed, his armor beginning to dissipate into a faint glow. The gauntlets lingered for a moment before vanishing completely. He rolled his shoulders, exhaling deeply. Yeah, I'm going. But before I leave. He hesitated, glancing at the shelves of odd trinkets and papers lining the far wall. Kisuke, I've been thinking. I've got a bit of an interest in inventions and technology. You know, messing with things and making them work better. I figured maybe I could learn a thing or two from you. Kisuke raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Oh. So the Kurosaki heir has a tinkering side, does he? I'll keep that in mind. There's a lot more to crafting and innovating than smashing things with oversized swords, you know. He grinned slyly. We'll see if you can keep up, though. My brilliance isn't easy to match. Ichigo nodded, still thinking about the man in the photo as he headed toward the exit. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Kisuke. Kisuke waved him off, his usual grin returning. Don't be late. And tell Masaki I'm innocent if she asks about the mess down here. After leaving Kisuke's shop, Ichigo made his way to Ryukin Ishida's estate. He glanced down at the scented glove strapped securely to his wrist, a reminder of his Quincy lineage and the untapped power he sought to control. He clenched his fist, feeling the flow of reassurance through the glove, amplifying his connection to the world around him. Ryukin, as usual, greeted him with a stoic expression. You're late. If you're serious about training your Quincy abilities, you'll need to treat this with more DSPLN, Kurosaki. Ichigo scratched the back of his head. Yeah. Sorry, Ryukin-san. I had a long session with Kisuke. Let's get started. As Ichigo began to focus, his bow materialized in his hands. It had changed significantly since the last time he used it. Gone was the simple, basic design. In its place stood a sleek, glowing construct that seemed to pulse with life. The bow was now asymmetrical, with one side longer and adorned with jagged edges resembling feathers, symbolizing his mixed heritage and the blending of his spiritual powers. The bow emitted a faint hum, a testament to the immense rapier it was pulling from the air around him. Ryukin raised an eyebrow as he observed. Interesting. Your bow has evolved. That's rare, even among pureblood Quincy. What do you call it? Ichigo stared at the weapon in his hands, feeling its power resonate with him. It feels alive. Like it's an extension of me. I'll call it Reincarnated, Spirit Core Bow. As the training session ended, Ichigo collapsed onto the ground, panting heavily. Ryukin stood over him, arms crossed. You've made progress. Still rough around the edges, but there's potential. Ichigo smirked despite his exhaustion. Thanks. I think You're not exactly great at compliments, are you? Ryukin ignored the jab and turned to leave. If you're going to wield the powers of a Quincy, you must understand them fully. This isn't just about strength, Kurosaki. It's about precision, control, and discipline. Without those, you'll never master what it means to be a true Quincy. Ichigo sat up, staring at Reincarnated in his hands. Its glow had dimmed, but its presence was still strong. He nodded to himself, determined to reach his goal. Ryukin glanced back, his expression softening slightly. You're more like your mother than you realize. Don't waste that potential. As Ryukin disappeared into the estate, Ichigo stood, gripping his bow tightly. His determination burned brighter than ever. With the Senti glove enhancing his connection to Reassurance and his new mastery of Quincy techniques, he was one step closer to unlocking the full scope of his power. The morning light seeped into the underground training chamber, creating an atmosphere that felt like an entirely different world. Kisuke Urahara stood casually, his striped hat tilted over his face as he prepared for the next stage of Ichigo's training. Tensai stood nearby, his stoic expression revealing a hint of reluctance. Ichigo, now fully rested from the previous day's intense sessions, approached with a mix of caution and irritation. What's today's challenge, Kisuke? Are you going to make me fight a hollow with both hands tied? Kisuke smirked, tipping his hat upward to reveal his mischievous eyes. Oh, much worse, my young apprentice. Today, we're going to strip you of your comforts. Time for you to truly understand the nature of your soul. Before Ichigo could ask what that meant, Kisuke raised his cane, pointing it at Ichigo's chest. A sharp, glowing light emanated from the tip, and Ichigo felt the connection between his soul and body begin to unravel. What the? Ichigo shouted, clutching his chest in panic as the connection was severed. Relax, Ichigo. This is all part of the process, Kisuke said nonchalantly, stepping back as Ichigo's body slumped to the ground, his soul form left standing, visibly disoriented. Ichigo glared at him. Process? You cut my connection. What are you? Before he could finish, Tensai suddenly appeared behind him, binding his soul form tightly with ropes of Kido. Tensai, what the heck? You're in on this too. Ichigo struggled against the bindings, his spiritual energy flaring. Tensai bowed his head slightly. I apologize, young Master Ichigo. This is for your growth. Ichigo's frustration boiled over as Kisuke walked to the edge of a deep pit nearby, gesturing for Tensai to bring Ichigo over. Wait a second. That's where you're taking me? Ichigo shouted, his eyes widening as he realized what was about to happen. Kisuke grinned. Exactly. You'll have 72 hours to climb out. That's all the time you'll need to find the strength within yourself or risk becoming a hollow. No pressure. You're insane. Ichigo yelled, his voice echoing in the cavern. Once I'm out of here, Kisuke, I swear, I'm telling Mom. She's going to be furious. Kisuke waved a hand dismissively as Tensai, still holding the bound Ichigo, stepped to the edge of the pit. Promises, Ichigo. But if you want to survive, you'll have to do more than just complain. See you in 72 hours. Tensai gave a solemn bow before dropping Ichigo into the abyss. As Ichigo plummeted, his shouts of protest faded into the distance. Kisuke turned to Tensai with a knowing smile. Think he'll manage? Tensai adjusted his glasses. He has the resolve. Whether it's enough, we'll see. The two men stood in silence as the 72-hour clock began ticking. Kisuke chuckled at Tensai's warning, tipping his hat forward. Oh, come now, Tensai. Masaki wouldn't really do that to me. I'm her beloved Kisuke Urahara, after all. Tensai adjusted his glasses, giving Kisuke a flat, knowing look. Beloved, you say? She nearly broke your ribs last time you pulled a stunt like this with Ichigo. Kisuke froze for a moment, the memory of Masaki's glare flashing vividly in his mind. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. Yes, well. That was a misunderstanding. Besides, this is necessary for Ichigo's growth. I'm sure she'll understand. Eventually. Tensai crossed his arms. Understand. Kisuke, I've already drafted the medical forms. You should probably start practicing your apologies now. Kisuke sighed, scratching the back of his neck. Fine, fine. I'll let Ryukin know. But honestly, you're making it sound like I'm running a death wish here. Masaki loves me deep down. Tensai raised an eyebrow. Should I remind you of the time she sent you flying into the wall because you suggested Ichigo toughen up? Kisuke winced, the memory creeping into his side. Okay, point taken. Ryukin it is. But if she asks, you'll back me up, right? Tensai gave him a deadpan look. Absolutely not. Kisuke groaned dramatically, already envisioning the scolding he was about to endure. Fine, fine. But you're cleaning up the mess if Masaki shows up swinging. Tensai smirked slightly. I'll make sure the medical supplies are stocked. Kisuke sighed, waving dismissively. Let's just hope Ichigo comes out of this stronger. For my sake. Tensai adjusted his glasses as he grabbed his Denryashinki. Turning toward the entrance of the training area, he called out sharply, Yururu. Jinta. Get down here immediately. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed, and soon Yururu and Jinta appeared, both looking puzzled. What's going on, Tensai? Jinta asked, leaning casually on his broomstick. Did the boss mess something up again? Tensai crossed his arms, his expression stern. Kisuke has done it again. He's thrown Ichigo into the pit for training. Yururu gasped, her eyes wide. The pit? But that's dangerous. What if Ichigo doesn't make it? That's why we need to prepare, Tensai replied firmly. Go and gather the medical supplies immediately. And set up a barrier around the area. Masaki is bound to find out, and when she does, Kisuke will need all the protection he can get. Jinta smirked, already moving to grab the supplies. Man, the boss is in for it. I'd hate to be in his shoes when Masaki shows up. Yururu nodded as she hurriedly fetched sealing talismans and reishi-charged tools. We should be quick. If Kisuke gets hurt again, we might need Ryukin to help. Tensai sighed deeply, shaking his head. He knew they needed to be prepared. Start setting up the barrier now. Kisuke may be a genius, but he's also the most reckless man I've ever known. As Jinta and Yururu began arranging the shimmering barrier and laying out medical supplies, Yururu paused, glancing toward the pit. Do you think Ichigo will really be okay down there? Tensai offered a small, reassuring smile. Ichigo is tougher than he looks. He'll make it through. But Kisuke? Jinta grinned, adjusting the barrier talisman he was placing. He won't make it through Masaki's wrath, that's for sure. They all shared a brief, knowing chuckle before returning to their tasks. Despite the tense atmosphere, there was a sense of camaraderie as they prepared for the inevitable chaos that would follow. Meanwhile, Ichigo lay at the bottom of the dark, cavernous pit, the air heavy with spiritual energy. His arms were tightly bound behind him by glowing, reinforced spiritual chains, their cold metal biting into his skin. The dim light filtering down from above only added to the oppressive atmosphere. He groaned, pulling at the chains, but they wouldn't budge. His breath came in ragged gasps as he looked around, searching for anything that could help. The walls of the pit were jagged and steep, offering no easy path out. "Damn it, Kisuke," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Throwing me down here like this? What does he think I am, a test dummy?" Memories of Kisuke's smug grin flashed through his mind. "You've got 72 hours, Ichigo," Kisuke had said, tilting his striped hat playfully. "Figure it out, or else." "Well, let's not think about the or else, shall we?" Ichigo growled in frustration, his body straining against the bindings. When I get out of here, Kisuke, I swear, you're gonna regret this. I'll tell Mom everything. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he forced himself to focus. This wasn't just about survival, it was about proving himself. The chain connecting his arms began to glow faintly, reacting to his spiritual energy. All right, Ichigo, he muttered to himself, taking a deep breath. You've got this. Just think. He closed his eyes, reaching deep within himself for any spark of power. Slowly, the rapier in the air began to respond, drawn to him like moths to a flame. The sound of the chains rattling echoed ominously in the pit, a reminder of the challenge ahead. 72 hours, Ichigo whispered to himself. Plenty of time. No way am I losing to some stupid chains. His resolve hardened, and despite the weight of the situation, a small, defiant smirk tugged at his lips. As the timer ticked down to the last 2 hours, Ichigo lay at the bottom of the pit, his body trembling as the chains that had once bound him had already been severed. His breathing was ragged, and a dark, hollow mask began forming over his face as the pull of hollowification grew stronger. He clenched his fists, sweat dripping from his brow, trying to fight the overwhelming urge to give in. No. Ichigo muttered, his voice shaky but resolute. This isn't how it ends. Closing his eyes, he forced himself to focus, delving deep into his subconscious. Suddenly, he found himself in his inner world, a strange place with countless floating boxes, some white, some dark, and 2 crimson-red ribbons that caught his attention. As if on instinct, Ichigo reached out and grabbed the red boxes. The moment his hands touched them, a surge of spiritual energy burst forth, engulfing the world in blinding light. The boxes shattered, revealing 2 towering figures who stepped forward with an aura that made Ichigo's breath catch. The first figure was a strikingly beautiful woman, her 9 flowing tails swaying elegantly behind her. She was draped in pristine white robes, her crimson eyes glowing with wisdom and fiery strength. Her voice, both melodic and commanding, broke the silence. Ichigo Kurosaki, she began, her tail swishing slowly, I am Yoko, the embodiment of your resolve to protect and destroy when necessary. My Zanpakuto's name is Kurama the Nine Flame. But tell me, are you truly ready to wield my power? Before Ichigo could respond, the second figure stepped forward. His presence was colder, sharper. He was clad in crimson and black armor, his helmet adorned with horns. Lightning crackled around him, the air thick with his thunderous energy. His eyes, glowing with an eerie calm, bore into Ichigo. Save your excuses, he said, his voice a low rumble. You have sought us, but power isn't given freely. I am Itachi, and my Zanpakuto is Hekureki Gecko Thunder Moonlight. If you wish to wield me, you must prove you are worthy. Ichigo took a shaky breath, his hands trembling under the weight of their spiritual pressure. But his crimson eyes burned with determination as he stood his ground. I don't care what it takes, he said, his voice unwavering. I'll fight. I'll protect the people who matter to me. You're not just my power, you're my allies. I'll earn your strength. Yoko tilted her head, her fox-like grin sharp and predatory. Brave words, she said. But bravery alone won't save you. Show us your resolve. Itachi nodded, and in an instant, the spiritual pressure doubled. Flames erupted around Ichigo, their heat searing into his soul as Yoko's energy encircled him. Simultaneously, jagged bolts of lightning crackled through the air, striking with deafening force as Itachi tested his limits. The pain was overwhelming, yet Ichigo refused to fall. He grit his teeth, enduring the fiery trials of Kurama and the electric storm of Hekureki Gecko, his body trembling but his spirit resolute. At last, the flames subsided, and the lightning faded. Yoko's tail swayed gracefully as she stepped closer, her smile softer now. Very well, she said. You've shown us your heart, Ichigo. We'll stand by your side. Itachi crossed his arms, his voice calm but approving. From now on, our power is yours. Use it wisely. When Ichigo opened his eyes, he was back in the pit. The chains that had once bound him were gone, reduced to ash. His hands gripped two blades, each distinct in appearance yet radiating overwhelming energy. In his right hand was Kurama, a sleek katana with flame-like patterns running along its blade and a hilt wrapped in red and white cloth. In his left hand was Hekureki Gecko, a jagged, lightning-shaped blade with a glowing core that pulsed with thunderous energy. Standing tall in his Shinigami robes, Ichigo removed his hollow mask, revealing his black hair and piercing crimson eyes. The spiritual pressure around him was suffocating, a testament to his newfound power. He glared at Kisuke, his voice calm but firm. "I'm out," Ichigo declared, his blades shimmering with power. "And you're done for, Kisuke." He reached into his robes, pulling out his phone as he called his mother, his voice now a blend of determination and urgency. "Mom," Ichigo said, his voice trembling slightly, "you won't believe what Kisuke did to me. He threw me in a pit. He tied me up. He left me there for 3 whole days without food or water. I was scared, Mom. I didn't think I'd make it." Kisuke's jaw dropped as he heard Ichigo's words. His acting was so flawless it could win him an Oscar, complete with trembling breaths and sniffles to sell the story. Back at the Kurosaki household, Masaki's expression turned dark as she gripped the phone. "He did what?" Masaki's voice practically echoed through dimensions. "I didn't want to worry you, but... I don't know, Mom. I think I need to rest. My body feels so weak." Ichigo's voice cracked as he feigned helplessness. "You just wait right there, sweetie," Masaki said, her voice soft and motherly before hardening. "Urahara Kisuke is going to regret ever being born." Ichigo hung up and turned to Kisuke, his expression shifting into a smirk. "Better call Ryukin for an ambulance. You're going to need it." Kisuke sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I suppose I deserve that." Tessai, who stood nearby, folded his arms and muttered under his breath, "Told you this would happen." Ichigo clenched his fists, summoning tears into his voice like a seasoned actor accepting his award. "I don't know if I can ever forgive him, Mom. I was alone in the dark. It was terrifying. I thought I'd never see you or Karen or Yuzu again." His voice cracked at the right moment, the sheer conviction making Kisuke sweat as he froze in place, his fan slipping from his hand. Yururu and Jinta, who were helping Tessai stack boxes of supplies nearby, exchanged wide-eyed glances. "He's going for the Academy Award," Jinta whispered, clearly impressed. Yururu nodded solemnly. "He might actually win." Meanwhile, Kisuke felt a shiver run down his spine. He looked at Ichigo in horror, unable to move or defend himself from the emotional onslaught. I can explain," he stammered weakly. Before he could finish, the sound of rapid footsteps filled the line. "I'm coming there right now," Masaki declared, her voice a mix of fury and worry. From the corner of his eye, Ichigo saw Kisuke freeze, his fan slipping from his grip as the gravity of the situation sank in. Isshin, who had been lazily lounging nearby, suddenly perked up. "Masaki's coming here?" he asked, grinning like a kid at Christmas. "Oh, this I have to see." Masaki's spiritual energy flared as she stormed into the shop moments later, her expression a terrifying combination of maternal rage and righteous fury. Kisuke, realizing he was out of excuses, began backing away, holding his hands up defensively. "Now, Masaki," he started, his voice nervous, "let's talk about this rationally." But she wasn't having it. "Rationally?" she shouted, grabbing a broomstick that Tessai had leaned against the wall. "You chained my son and left him in a pit for 3 days. What kind of training is that?" As Kisuke stumbled backward, Isshin casually walked in behind her, hands in his pockets, a wide grin on his face. "Don't mind me," he said cheerfully. "I'm just here to watch." "Kisuke Urahara!" Masaki yelled, swinging the broomstick as Kisuke yelped and tried to dodge. "I'll teach you what real training feels like." Ichigo leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold with mild amusement. Jinta and Yururu peeked out from behind a stack of boxes, their eyes wide as Masaki chased Kisuke around the shop. "Should we do something?" Yururu asked hesitantly. Jinta shook his head, smirking. "Nah, this is better than TV." Tessai sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'll prepare some bandages." Isshin, meanwhile, clapped a hand on Ichigo's shoulder, still grinning. "You've got your mother's brains, kid. That was genius." Ichigo shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "He deserved it. Maybe next time, he'll think twice before throwing me into a pit." As Kisuke let out another yelp, narrowly avoiding Masaki's wrath, Ichigo's inner world echoed with laughter. Yoko's sly voice chimed in, "Your mom's scarier than 1,000 hollows." Itachi's calm tone followed. "A fitting punishment." Kisuke underestimated her. Ichigo smirked, watching as Masaki delivered another swing. "Sometimes, all it takes is a well-placed phone call." Ichigo leaned casually against the doorframe, a mischievous glint in his eye as he turned to his father. "Well, Dad, you see. Kisuke has that look." Isshin raised an eyebrow, confused. "What look?" Ichigo smirked. "The, I'm about to reveal something embarrassing about you, look." Kisuke, standing a safe distance away, snapped his fan shut and grinned deviously. "Oh, Isshin, you really should have stayed on my good side. You see, Masaki," he said, turning to her with theatrical flair, "there's something you might not know about our dear Isshin's past." Masaki folded her arms, raising an inquisitive eyebrow. "Oh. Do tell, Kisuke." Isshin's carefree demeanor instantly evaporated. "Kisuke, you wouldn't dare." "Oh, but I would," Kisuke interrupted with a chuckle, thoroughly enjoying the moment. "Did you know that before your marriage, Isshin had a bit of a wild streak?" Masaki's expression darkened slightly, her maternal aura shifting into something more intimidating. "Wild streak?" Kisuke fanned himself, ignoring Isshin's frantic attempts to stop him. "Oh, yes. For example, during his bachelor party, he didn't just go out for drinks. No. Isshin booked an entire bar filled with women to celebrate his last day of freedom." Isshin's face turned pale as Masaki's spiritual pressure began to rise. "Kisuke." Isshin growled, lunging at the shopkeeper, but Kisuke dodged effortlessly, laughing as he danced out of reach. "And that's not all," Kisuke added, still laughing. "Before you two were married, Isshin used to frequent bars, places that were, shall we say, very lively just for the company of." Masaki's voice cut through like a blade. "Isshin Shiba." Isshin turned to her, hands up defensively. "Masaki, wait. It's not what it sounds like. Kisuke is exaggerating." "Oh, I'll deal with him after I deal with you," Masaki said, grabbing the same broomstick she had used earlier. Her eyes narrowed dangerously as she took a step toward her husband. Isshin turned to Ichigo, desperate. "Ichigo. Do something. Help me." Ichigo shrugged, barely hiding his amusement. "Oh no, Dad. I think you should run. Mom's going to finish up with Kisuke and then move on to you. Might want to get a head start." "Traitor." Isshin barked before bolting out the door. Behind him, Masaki's voice thundered. "Get back here." Meanwhile, Kisuke was laughing so hard he could barely stand. "Oh, this is too good," he managed between gasps. Masaki turned her glare to him next, pointing the broomstick directly at his chest. "Don't think you're off the hook, Kisuke. You're next." For once, Kisuke's grin faltered, and he began to back away nervously. "Now, Masaki, let's not be hasty." Ichigo sighed, shaking his head as he watched his father and Kisuke scramble for their lives. "Mom's a force of nature," he muttered to himself. In his inner world, Yoko chuckled. "She's scarier than a bankai." Itachi remarked in his usual stoic tone that a man must face the consequences of his actions, and Isshin was no exception. Ichigo smirked, noting that being married to Masaki Shiba came with its own set of challenges. After some time, the chaotic atmosphere in the Urahara shop had finally settled, though the aftermath was anything but peaceful. Isshin and Kisuke lay on the ground, both looking worse for wear. Kisuke appeared particularly battered, his fan crumpled beside him as he groaned in discomfort. Isshin clutched his side, muttering something incoherent about surviving worse fights. Masaki stood nearby, her broomstick resting triumphantly on her shoulder. She brushed a strand of hair out of her face, clearly satisfied with her work. "That'll teach you both to behave," she said, dusting off her hands. Ichigo stood off to the side, arms crossed and shaking his head. "I warned you, Dad." "And Kisuke? You really brought this on yourself." Kisuke attempted a weak laugh but winced instead, clutching his ribs. "I was only providing entertainment. I didn't think she'd be so effective." Isshin glared at him from the ground. "You couldn't just stop at the bachelor party, huh? You had to bring up everything." "Oh, stop whining, Isshin," Masaki interrupted, glaring at him. "You deserved every bit of it." As the tension eased slightly, Tessai entered the room with a calm yet concerned expression, phone still in hand. "I've already called Ryukin and informed him of the situation," he said, adjusting his glasses. "The ambulance should be here shortly, and he's reserving a room at the hospital for both of you." Isshin groaned loudly. "An ambulance? Come on, Tessai. It's not that bad." He tried to sit up but winced and fell back down immediately. "Okay. Maybe it's a little bad." Kisuke waved his hand weakly. "A room. Make sure it's private. And soundproof. I don't need Ryukin laughing at me too." Ichigo chuckled. "Oh, don't worry, Kisuke. Ryukin's definitely going to laugh at you." Yururu peeked out from behind the door, looking worried, while Jinta stood beside her, smirking. "Man, you guys really got wrecked," Jinta said, crossing his arms. Yururu gasped softly. "Should we get some ice?" Tessai nodded. "Ice would be helpful. Fetch some for now. But leave the real treatment to the professionals when they arrive." Masaki, now much calmer, looked at the two men on the ground. "Maybe this will teach you both to think before you act. Kisuke, you should have known better. And Isshin, don't think you're off the hook. We'll talk about this wild streak of yours later." Isshin gulped, his face pale. "Yes, dear." As the faint sound of sirens approached in the distance, Ichigo sighed. "Well, Dad, Kisuke. You two might want to start preparing your apologies. Ryukin's not going to let you live this down." Isshin groaned again. "This day just keeps getting worse." Kisuke muttered with a weak grin, "Worth it." Masaki's broomstick tapped the floor ominously, silencing any further commentary. Masaki's temper hadn't quite cooled yet as she stormed toward Ichigo, her hands on her hips. Her sharp eyes locked onto her son, who flinched slightly, realizing he was about to get dragged into the chaos. "Ichigo Kurosaki," she shouted, grabbing him by the ear with surprising strength. "Care to explain why you didn't tell me sooner about Kisuke throwing you into that pit?" "Ow, ow, ow, Mom." Ichigo winced, trying to gently pry her fingers off his ear. "What was I supposed to do? He threw me in there. What was I gonna say? Hey Mom, Kisuke's making me fight for my life in some underground pit?" "Yes. That's exactly what you should have said." Masaki scolded, twisting his ear slightly. Ichigo groaned. "I didn't have a choice. If I didn't climb out, I would have turned into a hollow." "Do you want a hollow for a son?" "Because that's how you get a hollow for a son." Masaki stopped for a moment, her grip loosening slightly, though she still looked furious. "And what about Kisuke? Did he just casually throw you in there like it was some kind of exercise?" Ichigo sighed, his head dropping in defeat. You know how Kisuke is, Mom. He made it sound like some important training to unlock my powers. Next thing I know, I'm chained up in a giant hole, fighting for my humanity. From the ground, Kisuke weakly raised his hand. It worked, didn't it? Look at him now. A fine substitute Shinigami. Shut up, Kisuke. Masaki snapped, glaring at him. Kisuke immediately dropped his hand, groaning in pain as if even speaking had taken all his energy. Ichigo muttered under his breath, see? This is why I didn't say anything. You'd have beaten him to death already. Masaki turned back to him, her eyes narrowing. Don't think you're off the hook, young man. You could have told your father or me before it got to that point. Ichigo sighed again. Dad? Really? What would he have done, other than laugh and then jump into the pit to help me train? From the ground, Isshin raised his head weakly. Hey! That's not fair. I probably would've. I don't know. Done something. He trailed off, clearly too injured to argue further. Masaki let go of Ichigo's ear, shaking her head as she paced back and forth. I swear, between your father, Kisuke, and now you, this family is going to give me a heart attack one day. Ichigo rubbed his ear, muttering, yeah, well, at least you won't have to deal with a hollow version of me. Masaki pointed the broomstick at him. Don't test me, Ichigo. You're grounded until I figure out how to deal with this mess. Grounded? Ichigo blinked. Mom, I'm literally a Shinigami. How are you going to ground me? Don't push your luck, young man, she snapped. Ichigo sighed for the third time, muttering under his breath, next time Kisuke wants to throw me into a pit, I'll just stay there. Later, in the hospital, the atmosphere was less one of recovery and more of sheer humiliation. Isshin and Kisuke lay in adjacent hospital beds, both wrapped in bandages. The occasional groan of pain escaped their lips as Ryukin leaned against the wall, arms crossed and a smug grin on his face. I must say, Ryukin began, his voice dripping with sarcasm, seeing you two like this has been the highlight of my week. Tell me, Isshin, did you even attempt to defend yourself, or did Masaki's broomstick completely obliterate what little pride you have left? Isshin turned his head slightly, wincing in pain. Oh, shut up, Ryukin. At least my wife cares enough to keep me in line. What's your excuse for having the emotional range of a rock? Ryukin chuckled, unfazed by the jab. Ah, yes, because clearly being confronted by your own spouse is the hallmark of a healthy relationship. Truly inspiring, Isshin. Kisuke, his voice muffled by the bandages wrapped around his head, weakly chimed in. At least. I still have my genius reputation. Intact. Pain is temporary. Brilliance is eternal. Ryukin arched an eyebrow, his smirk widening. Oh, is that what you're calling this? Brilliance? Because from where I'm standing, it looks more like foolishness rewarded with consequences. Kisuke groaned, shifting slightly in his bed. You're just jealous. Because no one would challenge you with a broomstick out of love. Ryukin pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his eyes narrowing. Jealous? Of what? The fact that you two managed to turn a domestic disagreement into an all-out mess that required my hospital to clean up? Hardly. Isshin attempted to sit up but immediately regretted it, clutching his side. You know, Ryukin, for a guy who's supposed to be our friend, you're doing a terrible job at showing any sympathy. Sympathy? Ryukin repeated, feigning shock. Why would I waste sympathy on the two of you? Kisuke's reckless experiments are the reason half of us are constantly in danger, and you, Isshin, somehow manage to make bad decisions look like an art form. This is what happens when foolishness meets consequence. Kisuke chuckled weakly, though it quickly turned into a coughing fit. At least I got some good data out of it. Worth every bruise. And broken bone. Ryukin rolled his eyes, stepping closer to Kisuke's bed. Good data. Oh, yes, because your idea of progress involves throwing a teenager into a pit and nearly getting yourself in trouble with his mother. Truly groundbreaking science, Urahara. Ishin, now lying back in defeat, muttered, "You could at least offer us some of those fancy painkillers instead of mocking us non-stop." Ryukin smirked again, his voice as cold as ever. "Oh, don't worry. I've already instructed my staff to keep you both on minimal pain relief. Consider it a lesson in restraint. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before dragging my hospital into your nonsense." The door opened suddenly, and Tessa came in, looking mildly exasperated. "The room's ready for you two to stay overnight. Try not to cause any more trouble while you're here." As Tessa left, Ryukin leaned closer to Ishin and Kisuke, his tone low but dripping with amusement. "Enjoy your stay, gentlemen. I'll be sure to send Masaki and Ichigo your regards. Maybe they'll visit. If they're feeling generous." Ishin groaned. "I hate you so much right now." Ryukin smirked as he turned to leave. "Oh, the feeling's mutual. But unlike you, I'm not the one stuck in a hospital bed. Good night, gentlemen." As the door closed behind him, Kisuke sighed. "Why is it that we surround ourselves with people who love to challenge us when we're down?" Ishin glanced at him, a weak grin on his face. "Because we make it so easy for them." Ryukin froze mid-step, his confident smirk faltering as Ishin's words registered. Slowly, he turned back toward the bedridden duo, his expression a mix of disbelief and irritation. "What did you just say?" Ryukin asked, his voice low but laced with warning. Ishin, despite his battered state, managed a triumphant grin. "Oh, you heard me loud and clear, Mr. Perfect. You might be enjoying your moment now, but I just sent a little gift to your wife. Let's just say, it's a collection of some rather interesting moments from your younger days. The kind that'll make her want to have a long conversation with you." Kisuke, even in his injured state, started chuckling weakly. "Ah, yes. Nothing like the sweet sound of karmic justice. I may be in pain, but knowing you're in the hot seat, Ryukin. Priceless." Ryukin's eye twitched as he crossed his arms. "You wouldn't dare. What could you possibly have on me that would warrant such drama?" Ishin grinned wider, looking almost smug. "Oh, just a little something from that conference trip you took a few years ago. You know, the one where you claimed to be working late. Turns out Kisuke has a knack for security systems and may or may not have stumbled upon some footage. You might want to think twice about laughing at us now." Ryukin's calm facade cracked as he took a sharp breath. "You're bluffing." Kisuke, despite his bandaged head, raised a hand weakly, gesturing as if to say otherwise. "Oh, he's not. I personally encrypted the file and sent it. You should be getting a very special phone call any moment now. It's a masterpiece, if I do say so myself." Just then, Ryukin's phone buzzed in his pocket. The room fell silent as he slowly pulled it out, his expression darkening with every second he stared at the screen. His wife's name flashed across the display. Ishin gave a low whistle. "Ah, right on cue. Should I call Tessa to reserve the bed next to us? I have a feeling you'll need it after tonight." Ryukin clenched his jaw, his fingers tightening around his phone. "You two are insufferable." Kisuke's muffled laughter grew louder. "And you're too perfect for your own good. Consider this a little balancing act." Ryukin sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I don't know why I bother dealing with you two." Ishin smirked despite the pain. "Because deep down, you love us. And let's be honest, you enjoy the chaos. Admit it, Ryukin, you'd miss us if we weren't around to keep life interesting." Ryukin gave them both a flat look before turning toward the door. "Interesting? No. Infuriating? Absolutely." He paused at the threshold, glancing back at them. "But don't think this is over. When this blows over, I'll find a way to pay you both back. And believe me, it'll be spectacular. As he walked out, his phone still buzzing, Isshin and Kisuke exchanged a glance. You think he'll actually survive tonight? Isshin asked. Kisuke chuckled softly. If he doesn't, we'll send flowers to his funeral. Though knowing his wife, it might be his ashes she sends back. Both men laughed, or rather, winced in pain while laughing as they leaned back in their beds, savoring their small victory over the ever-composed Ryukin. Ryukin cautiously opened the door to his office, already dreading what awaited him. The room was dark, eerily silent, and his instincts screamed that something was amiss. His hand hovered over the light switch for a moment before he flicked it on. There, sitting on his desk with an unsettlingly calm expression, was his wife. Her posture was poised and elegant, but what caught Ryukin's attention most was the unmistakable flip-flop in her hand. She tilted her head slightly, a sweet yet menacing smile gracing her lips as she welcomed him home. Ryukin froze, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He stammered, asking what brought her to his office so late. She twirled the flip-flop in her hand, her eyes narrowing. She mentioned wanting to have a little chat to discuss some very interesting things she had learned that day. Taking a cautious step back, Ryukin raised his hands defensively, trying to reason with her. He insisted that whatever Kisuke and Isshin told her was exaggerated. Her smile widened, but her eyes darkened as she questioned if the stories about his bachelor party and other past events were just misunderstandings. Ryukin gulped, claiming that he was a changed man, trying to downplay the past. She tapped the flip-flop against her palm, the sound echoing ominously as she suggested they discuss things properly. Panicking, Ryukin attempted to escape, reminding her of the children and the staff outside. She stood firm, assuring him that the staff already knew who ran the hospital and that the children would understand that Daddy needed some DSPLN. Ryukin turned to flee, claiming he had a patient to see. She sighed, shaking her head as she followed him, warning him that running would only make things worse. The sounds of hurried footsteps and the unmistakable smack of a flip-flop echoed through the halls of the hospital that night, leaving everyone nearby to wonder about their chairman's fate. Meanwhile, in a quiet hospital room, Isshin and Kisuke lay side by side in their beds, both heavily medicated but entertained. They counted softly under their breath, their faces lighting up with mischievous grins at distant sounds. With each loud smack, they exchanged amused comments about Ryukin's predicament. Isshin noted how well he was holding up, while Kisuke mentioned having popcorn ready for later. Tessai, standing in the corner with a recording device, sighed deeply, clearly not thrilled with his assignment but unable to refuse Kisuke's persistence. Another round of loud smacks echoed down the hallway, followed by a pained yelp and a muffled apology from Ryukin. Isshin and Kisuke broke into laughter, momentarily forgetting their own injuries as they imagined the scene unfolding. Kisuke leaned back with a satisfied sigh, remarking that the night was worth every bruise. He suggested sending Ryukin a thank you card, while Isshin joked about him being in the bed between them, with plenty of time to read whatever was sent. As Ryukin's wife stepped out of his office, she adjusted her appearance, ensuring her flip-flop and wooden spoon were discreetly tucked away. Her expression was calm as she instructed the staff to prepare a room for her husband, claiming he had fallen down the staircase. The staff nodded hurriedly, not daring to question her explanation. As she entered the ward where Kisuke and Isshin were recovering, her sharp gaze found them. She began questioning them, her voice sweet but laced with an edge, about what foolishness had led to their current state. Kisuke nervously chuckled, admitting he might have been too tough on Ichigo during training. She raised a brow, cutting him off, revealing that Masaki had already informed her of everything. Before he could respond, 2 orderlies entered, wheeling in a bruised and battered Ryukin. His face showed defeat as they settled him into the bed between Kisuke and Isshin. She leaned down, patting Ryukin's hand with mock concern, assuring him he would recover soon. Ryukin groaned, avoiding eye contact with her. Meanwhile, Kisuke and Isshin exchanged amused glances, struggling to suppress their laughter. Isshin welcomed Ryukin to the club, while Kisuke suggested they teach him how to survive disciplinary action. Ryukin glared at them but remained silent. Satisfied with her point made, his wife turned and strode out of the room, leaving the three men to contemplate their shared predicament. As the door closed behind her, Kisuke whispered about hoping Tessai recorded that moment, to which Isshin snickered, confident that the footage would be priceless. Ryukin groaned louder, burying his face in his hands, expressing his frustration with them all. Despite their own injuries, Kisuke and Isshin couldn't help but chuckle. Kisuke savored the moment, reminding Ryukin of the earlier laughter at their expense. This, my dear friend, is what's called karma. And oh, is she a glorious force that came back to bite. You right when you least expected it. Isshin, still bruised but unable to resist, burst out laughing. Man, you should have seen your face when she came at you with that flip-flop and wooden spoon combo. Priceless. Ryukin glared at them, his usual stoic demeanor cracked by his frustration and embarrassment. Laugh all you want. When I'm out of this bed, I'll make you both pay. Kisuke leaned back as comfortably as his battered body allowed, giving a sly grin. Oh, Ryukin, we already paid. Masaki's wrath wasn't exactly gentle. But watching you get your turn. Totally worth it. Isshin smirked. And let's not forget you were the one mocking us earlier. Guess karma heard you loud and clear. Ryukin huffed, leaning back against his pillow, his pride clearly wounded more than his body. I don't know who's worse, my wife or the two of you. Kisuke chuckled. Oh, it's definitely your wife. But hey, at least you didn't end up with the discount breakfast special she arranged for us. She really knows how to twist the knife. Isshin laughed again, shaking his head. And she upped our painkiller dosages, too. The staff couldn't say no to the chairman's wife. Talk about adding insult to injury. Ryukin groaned, rubbing his temples. Remind me why I associate with you two. Because you secretly love us, Kisuke quipped, smirking. Isshin nodded sagely. And because misery loves company. Ryukin sighed deeply, muttering under his breath, I hate all of you. As Kisuke lay on his hospital bed, still recovering from Masaki's earlier, disciplinary measures, he heard the sound of familiar voices approaching his room. He turned his head, only to see Masaki walking in with Ichigo, Yuzu, Karen, Jinta, and Yururu trailing behind her like a small army. Well, Kisuke, how are you doing? Masaki said sweetly, a faint smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. Behind her, Tessai slipped quietly into the room, pretending to check on something as he carefully avoided eye contact. He'd left earlier to return to the shop but had come back after realizing that his recording of Ryukin's karma moment had somehow made its way into Kisuke's hands. Kisuke stepped into his shop, the familiar chime of the bell signaling his arrival. He removed his hat, sighing in relief at finally being back. But as he walked further in, his steps froze at the sight before him. Ichigo was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by stacks of books, scrolls, and files about the Soul Society. He was flipping through one of Kisuke's most detailed reports, a sharp look of focus on his face. Ichigo, Kisuke called out cautiously, his voice tinged with surprise. What are you doing? Ichigo didn't even look up. What does it look like? I'm reading. Kisuke narrowed his eyes and stepped closer, noticing the sheer amount of classified material Ichigo had gotten his hands on. Since when have you been reading this stuff? Finally, Ichigo glanced up, an annoyed expression on his face. Since you were in the hospital for the past week. Tessai gave me access to all of this. Kisuke's eye twitched. Tessai. Allowed you? Ichigo smirked, closing the file he was reading. Yup. He figured since I'm already in this mess with the Soul Society, I might as well know everything about it. And honestly, I agree. Kisuke rubbed his temples, muttering under his breath, that man needs to stop being so helpful. Relax, Kisuke, Ichigo said, leaning back on his hands. This stuff is actually useful. You should have told me about some of it earlier. It could have saved us a lot of time. Kisuke huffed, plopping down on a cushion nearby. You don't just hand over sensitive information about an interdimensional organization to a teenager, Ichigo. There are rules. Ichigo raised an eyebrow. Rules? You mean like throwing me into a pit and nearly turning me into a hollow? Those kinds of rules. Kisuke winced, realizing he had no argument there. Fair point, he muttered. Ichigo leaned forward, his expression serious. Look, Kisuke. I don't care how dangerous this stuff is. If I'm going to protect my family, my friends, and myself, I need to know everything. No more half-truths or cryptic hints. Kisuke studied Ichigo for a moment, then sighed in defeat. Fine. But if you're going to dive into all this, you're doing it under my supervision. And don't go messing with anything that looks like a keto formula or an experiment log. Those are volatile. Got it, Ichigo said, smirking as he picked up another file. By the way, your handwriting is hard to read. Half of this stuff is barely legible. Kisuke rolled his eyes, muttering, teenagers. Just as he was about to settle in, Tessai walked into the room, holding a tray of tea. Ah, Mr. Urahara, you're back. I trust your recovery was smooth. Kisuke shot him a glare. Tessai, care to explain why Ichigo has been reading classified information all week? Tessai blinked innocently. I merely thought it was appropriate, given his involvement in recent events. Besides, he's a fast learner. Ichigo grinned. See? Tessai gets it. Kisuke groaned, slumping back against the wall. At this rate, I'm going to need another hospital stay. Tessai placed the tea tray down and smiled. Perhaps you should take it easy, Mr. Urahara. Stress is bad for your health. Stress. This is stress, Kisuke muttered, gesturing at Ichigo, who was already engrossed in another report. Ichigo didn't even glance up. By the way, Kisuke, this report about the Soul King. Yeah, we're definitely going to need to talk about that. Kisuke sighed deeply, already regretting ever stepping foot back into his shop. Ichigo closed the thick scroll he had been reading and casually leaned back, holding up a small booklet he had pulled from one of Kisuke's hidden shelves. The front read, Bank Records, in Kisuke's unmistakable scrawl. Kisuke froze mid-sip of his tea. Oh no, he muttered under his breath. Ichigo waved the booklet with a sly grin. So, Kisuke, I was wondering how does someone who owns a dusty shop in the middle of nowhere end up with this much money in the bank? Don't tell me it's from selling candy to Jinta and Yururu. Kisuke set his tea down slowly, his face calm but his eyes sharp. Ichigo, you know it's rude to go through someone else's personal belongings. Oh, don't pull that card now, Ichigo retorted, flipping open the booklet. This isn't just personal. You're sitting on a goldmine, Kisuke. Care to explain how you're funding this place? Stock market, maybe? Kisuke sighed, scratching the back of his head. You've got a sharp eye, Ichigo. Fine. I dabble in a bit of stock trading on the side. You know, diversify my income streams, keep things running smoothly. Dabble? Ichigo raised an eyebrow. More like you're a stock market wizard. This ledger says you've been making huge profits for years. Care to teach me? Or should I call my dad and tell him? Kisuke's face paled. Why would you call your dad? Ichigo smirked, recalling a conversation from the past. His father had once mentioned wanting to be a stock trader before becoming a doctor, and Ichigo knew who had influenced that decision: Kisuke. But guess who talked him out of it? You. And now here you are, rolling in cash. Kisuke groaned, slumping forward. You're really not going to let this go, are you? Nope. Ichigo crossed his arms. Teach me how to make money, Kisuke. Or I spill the beans to Dad. And you know how dramatic he can get. Kisuke rubbed his temples. Fine. But only because I don't want your dad showing up here upset about betrayal and broken dreams. He gestured for Ichigo to sit down at the small desk. First lesson, patience. The stock market isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's about long-term investments and smart decisions. Ichigo nodded, pulling out a notepad. Got it. And don't think I'll go easy on you. If I find out you're holding back, I'll dig deeper into your files. Who knows what other secrets you're hiding? Kisuke chuckled nervously. This kid is going to be the death of me, he muttered before launching into a detailed explanation of stock trading strategies. From behind the counter, Tessai watched with amusement, quietly setting down another tray of tea. Perhaps Mr. Kurosaki will end up as successful as you, Mr. Urahara, he said. Kisuke shot him a glare. Don't encourage him, Tessai. Ichigo grinned. Oh, I'm going to be more than successful. I'm going to beat you at your own game. Kisuke smirked, his competitive streak sparking to life. We'll see about that, Ichigo. We'll see. Ichigo leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, his expression serious but with a hint of exasperation. Kisuke, sitting across from him, looked bemused, while Tessai quietly sipped tea in the corner, trying to remain uninvolved. You know, Kisuke, Ichigo began, his voice dripping with sarcasm, your shop might be fine for selling odd trinkets and candy, but it's way too cramped. And considering how you handle Soul Society's messes, I bet you'd send those problems straight to my house when things go sideways. Kisuke blinked innocently. Why would you think that, Ichigo? I've never. Don't even try it, Ichigo interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. I've already seen how you operate. Someone shows up needing a place to crash or a base to plan some insane mission, and boom, they're my problem. I'm not dealing with that in my current house. Kisuke chuckled, resting his chin on his hand. So, what's your grand plan, then? I'm buying a bigger house, Ichigo said firmly. Something spacious. Big enough to house a few freeloading Shinigami if I have to, but far enough away from Dad's clinic so I can get a moment of peace. Kisuke smirked. Ah, planning to live the high life, are we? Ichigo shot him a glare. No, I'm planning to live without chaos for once. And speaking of my dad, I'm going to convince him to set up a proper clinic elsewhere. He's got patients constantly coming in and out of the house, and then he brings his work home literally. If I can't get some peace and quiet, I'm going to lose it. Tessai coughed lightly. A wise choice, Mr. Kurosaki. Your father's enthusiasm is admirable, but his presence can disrupt tranquility. Exactly, Ichigo said, pointing at Tessai. And knowing my dad, even if I do manage to get him a clinic, he'll find some excuse to visit every day. But at least I'll have a barrier between home and madness. Kisuke grinned, leaning back with a teasing look. Well, Ichigo. You've really thought this through. Big house, separate clinic, all to avoid your dad. I'm impressed. Don't act so smug, Ichigo replied. This is partly your fault. If your shop wasn't so tiny, maybe people wouldn't end up at my house so often. Fair point, Kisuke admitted. But I do have one question: how are you going to pay for this grand new house? Stock trading lessons aren't instant, you know. Ichigo smirked. Don't worry about that. Between my savings, your stock market tricks, and maybe convincing Dad for a peace fund, I'll figure it out. Kisuke laughed. A peace fund, huh? Good luck getting that past him. I'll manage, Ichigo said confidently. Now, let's get back to the stock lessons. The sooner I start earning, the sooner I get my peace and quiet. Kisuke raised his teacup in mock salute. To your peaceful future, Ichigo. May it last longer than a week. Ichigo groaned. Don't jinx it, Kisuke. Ichigo leaned forward on the counter, a sly grin spreading across his face. Kisuke raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the sudden shift in Ichigo's tone. You know, Kisuke, Ichigo started, if there's one thing I've learned growing up with my dad, it's how to have leverage. And trust me, I've got more dirt on him than anyone else. Kisuke chuckled, setting down his tea. Oh. Care to elaborate? This sounds like it's going to be good. Let's just say, Ichigo continued, I know a few things about Dad's past that he'd rather not have Mom or Yuzu and Karen hear about. If I ever need to twist his arm, I've got enough to keep him in check for years. Kisuke grinned mischievously. And here I thought you were the responsible Kurosaki sibling. Turns out you've got a streak of cleverness in you. Ichigo smirked. Responsibility doesn't mean I don't know how to play the game. Plus, I've been, let's say, investing my pocket money. Kisuke tilted his head. Investing? You mean like the stock market? Not exactly, Ichigo said with a shrug. I've lent money to a few people at interest. If they don't pay me back, well, let's just say I'm not above knocking on their doors and collecting. Kisuke burst out laughing, nearly spilling his tea. Ichigo, are you telling me you're running a one-man loan operation? That's priceless. Hey, it's not like I'm robbing anyone, Ichigo defended. They needed the money, and I had it. If they don't return it, that's on them. I'm just making sure I don't lose out. Tessai, who had been quietly cleaning in the background, gave a small cough. Mr. Kurosaki, while your methods are unconventional, they do demonstrate a strong understanding of personal finance. See? Ichigo said, pointing to Tessai. Even he gets it. And if worse comes to worst, I can always borrow from Dad. He won't even notice until it's too late. Kisuke shook his head, still laughing. You're a piece of work, Ichigo. I never thought I'd see the day where you turned into a miniature loan operator. Call it what you want, Ichigo said with a shrug. All I know is, between leveraging Dad, collecting interest, and whatever you teach me about the stock market, I'll have enough to get that big house and maybe some peace for myself. Kisuke raised his teacup in mock salute. To the future financial empire of Ichigo Kurosaki. May it grow as big as your dad's ambitions. Ichigo groaned. Don't compare me to him, Kisuke. Ichigo had been making remarkable progress with his training, honing his skills with his Zanpakuto and exploring his potential. Alongside his training, he was also focused on ensuring that everything around him ran smoothly, especially his chaotic father, Isshin. One day, Kisuke was relaxing in his shop when Isshin burst through the door, visibly annoyed. He pointed an accusing finger at Kisuke and exclaimed, Urahara. Do you know what your protege has done now? Kisuke glanced up lazily. If it involves you, I'm sure it's something entertaining. Do tell. Isshin groaned, slamming his hands on the counter. That little tyrant forced me to enroll him in martial arts classes. Kisuke tilted his head. And what's so bad about that? Martial arts training could be good for him. Builds DSPLN, enhances focus. No, you don't get it. Isshin interrupted. I said I didn't have the money for the classes because I run a small clinic, and business isn't exactly booming. Kisuke smirked. Let me guess, Ichigo didn't take no for an answer. Isshin threw up his hands. Of course, he didn't. He pulled out a wad of cash, his cash, and shoved it into my hand, saying, no excuses, old man. You're paying for it. And when I said I still wouldn't do it, he marched down to the dojo himself and told them I'd be coming by to sign him up. Kisuke couldn't hold back his laughter. That's impressive. Your son is a force of nature, Isshin. You think it's funny? Isshin groaned. He even made me promise to pick him up after every session. He said, don't even think about slacking off, or I'll make you join the classes too. Before Kisuke could respond, the door opened, and Ichigo strode in with a large bag slung over his shoulder. Yo, Kisuke, Ichigo greeted casually, dropping the bag onto the counter with a loud thud. Kisuke raised an eyebrow. Ichigo. What's in the bag? Ichigo unzipped it to reveal an assortment of high-end watches, jewelry, and other valuables. Stuff I don't need, Ichigo said nonchalantly. I figured I'd sell it and use the money for something important. Isshin stared, slack-jawed. Where did you get all that? Ichigo shrugged. Some of it's from people who owed me money. They couldn't pay me back in cash, so I took collateral. The rest? Just things I've picked up here and there. Kisuke leaned forward, intrigued. And what's this important thing you're planning to use the money for? Ichigo's expression grew serious. I need a bigger house. Your shop's too small for when Soul Society members inevitably show up, and I'm tired of them crashing at my place. I also want to set up a proper clinic for Dad so he'll stop using my room as a storage space for random medical supplies. And while I'm at it, I'll make sure it has a soundproof office so I can get some peace and quiet. Isshin crossed his arms. And what makes you think you can just buy a house? Ichigo grinned, pulling out a bank book. Because I've been saving up. And Kisuke, don't think I didn't notice your little stock market hustle. Care to share some tips, or do I have to dig deeper into your records? Kisuke groaned, rubbing his temples. You've been keeping tabs on me, haven't you? Ichigo shrugged. I had time while you were in the hospital. Tensai let me go through your files. Isshin laughed nervously. Kisuke, you might want to start cooperating. My son doesn't take no for an answer. Kisuke sighed in defeat. Fine, Ichigo. I'll teach you a few things about investing. But only if you promise not to drag me into your other schemes. No promises, Ichigo replied with a smirk. Ichigo casually leaned against the counter in Kisuke's shop, a sly grin on his face. Kisuke, sipping tea, raised an eyebrow at the teen's demeanor. So, Kisuke, Ichigo began, a hint of mischief in his tone. Where's the nearest pawn shop? Kisuke blinked. A pawn shop? What's this sudden interest in selling valuables? Ichigo smirked, hoisting the bag of expensive items onto the counter. Well, I've got some assets I need to liquidate. And considering how you run this place, you're probably familiar with every shady spot in town. Help me out, will you? Kisuke's curiosity deepened as he eyed the bag. Ichigo, where did you even get all of this? Ichigo shrugged nonchalantly. People owed me money. Pocket money, actually. And when they didn't pay back in cash, I accepted these instead. Kisuke's fan froze mid-flap. Pocket money? And here I thought I was the schemer around here. Ichigo grinned wider. Oh, you're not off the hook either. Speaking of side hustles, Kisuke, let me guess this shop isn't your only source of income, is it? Kisuke leaned back, fanning himself innocently. Whatever do you mean, Ichigo? Ichigo chuckled darkly, leaning closer. Oh, come on. Don't play dumb. I know you've got some stock market hustle or other side gig funding this place. Kisuke's smile didn't falter. And what if I do? Why the sudden interest? Ichigo smirked devilishly. Because I know this old man here, he gestured towards Isshin, who had just entered the shop, visibly uneasy, can't even think of telling Mom about it. Isshin flinched at the mention of Masaki, sweat forming on his brow. Ichigo, don't you dare. Oh, I already blackmailed him, Ichigo cut in smoothly, turning his gaze back to Kisuke. Told him if he so much as mentioned anything about my plans to Mom, I'd spill his little secret hustle to her. Kisuke grinned wickedly. Isshin, you poor fool. What kind of dirt does your son have on you this time? Isshin groaned, burying his face in his hands. Let's just say it's the worst one. If Masaki found out, I'd be in big trouble. Ichigo nodded smugly. Exactly. So, Kisuke, are you going to help me find that pawn shop, or do I have to dig through your files again? Kisuke sighed dramatically, tossing his fan onto the counter. Fine, Ichigo. I'll help you. But only because I'd rather not get caught in the crossfire between you and your mother. Smart choice, Ichigo replied, grabbing the bag. Now, let's get to work. I've got a bigger house to buy and maybe even a clinic to build. I'm right here, you know. Ichigo exclaimed. And yet, he shot back, you've done nothing to stop me. Kisuke burst into laughter as Isshin glared at his son, muttering about how Masaki had clearly passed on her sharp wit to Ichigo. As Ichigo walked out of the shop with the address in hand, Kisuke turned to Isshin, an intrigued smile creeping onto his face. He leaned against the counter, fanning himself lazily. All right, Isshin, Kisuke began, his tone dripping with curiosity. What's the big secret? You know me, I'm not one to meddle unless it's for my own amusement or survival. So spill it. What does Ichigo have on you that's got you sweating bullets? Isshin froze, his face going pale. He avoided Kisuke's gaze, shifting uncomfortably. I don't know what you're talking about. Kisuke chuckled, closing his fan with a snap. Oh, come on. I can practically smell the fear on you. Whatever this is, it's got to be juicy. What is it? Did you forget an anniversary? Gamble away the grocery money? Or maybe you've got an old fling your dear wife doesn't know about. Isshin shot him a sharp glare. Shut it, Kisuke. You don't understand the stakes here. Kisuke smirked, leaning closer. Oh, I definitely don't, which is why you need to enlighten me. Besides, if Ichigo's using it to blackmail you, it's only a matter of time before he uses it on someone else like, say, me. Isshin groaned, running a hand through his hair. Fine. But you have to promise not to use this against me or tell Masaki. Kisuke held up a hand in mock sincerity. You have my word. Cross my heart and hope to. Well, I'll just say, cross my heart. Isshin sighed heavily, lowering his voice. Back in the day, before I met Masaki, I may have indulged a bit too much at a few, establishments. Kisuke's eyes lit up. Establishments, you say? You mean bars? Isshin blurted out, cutting him off. And not just any bars. Bars with entertainers. Kisuke's grin widened. Ah, so you were a connoisseur of the nightlife. Go on. Isshin glared at him but continued. And at my bachelor party, I may have gone a little overboard. Booked an entire place, brought in a lot of entertainers, and well, things got a bit rowdy. The quiet streets of Karakura town were bathed in the pale light of a full moon. A single hell butterfly fluttered through the cool night air, its delicate wings glowing faintly against the dark sky. It drifted past the bustling streets and came to rest near an alley where Ichigo Kurosaki stood, his black hair tied back in a loose ponytail. His crimson eyes glared coldly at a group of thugs who cowered before him. The thugs had trampled over a small patch of flowers left as an offering to a spirit girl who had been lingering in the area. Ichigo, who had made it his duty to protect the girl's memory, clenched his fists as the thugs stammered out weak excuses. You think destroying someone's memory is a joke? Get out of here before I really lose my patience, Ichigo warned in a low, threatening tone. The thugs didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled to their feet, tripping over each other as they fled the scene. Once they were gone, Ichigo knelt by the flowers, adjusting them with a careful hand. He then turned to the spirit girl, who hovered nearby with a somber expression. It's time, you know. Soul Society will be a much better place for you, Ichigo said gently. The girl hesitated for a moment, her translucent form trembling slightly. Ichigo gave her a reassuring smile before opening a portal with a wave of his hand. The black and white swirls of the Senkamen appeared before them, and the girl stepped forward hesitantly. Thank you, Ichigo. For everything, the spirit girl said softly. Ichigo nodded, watching as the portal closed behind her. He stayed there for a moment, staring at the empty spot where she had stood. Then, with a sigh, he turned and began making his way home. As Ichigo approached his house, he could already feel the chaotic energy coming from inside. With a resigned expression, he opened the door and immediately found himself under attack. Ichigo! Isshin lunged at Ichigo with a dramatic cry. Ichigo sidestepped effortlessly, delivering a swift kick that sent his father sprawling across the room. "Not tonight, old man," he replied deadpan. Isshin groaned dramatically from the floor. "Masaki! He kicked me again. Your son has no respect for his elders." From the kitchen, Masaki's voice rang out, filled with exasperation. "Maybe if you stopped acting like a lunatic, he wouldn't have to kick you." Ichigo smirked, slipping off his shoes as he stepped further into the house. His younger sisters, Yuzu and Karen, peeked out from the living room, both trying to stifle their laughter. "Nice one, Ichigo." "Dad's losing his edge," Karen grinned. "I think he's just too old for these games now," Yuzu giggled. Ichigo rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress the small smile tugging at his lips. Moments like these reminded him of why he fought so hard to protect the simple joys of his family life. He joined them for dinner, the warmth of their chatter filling the room as they shared stories and laughter. Later that night, Ichigo sat in his room, the quiet hum of his thoughts filling the space. He had just finished reading a book when he felt a familiar presence. A hell butterfly flitted into the room, followed by the sudden opening of a dark portal. From the portal stepped Rukia Kachiki, her petite frame clad in the traditional black shihakusho of the Soul Reapers. She looked around, her expression shifting to one of slight discomfort as she was hit with the overwhelming spiritual pressure emanating from the room. "This room. It's suffocating. How can anyone have this much spiritual pressure?" Rukia thought to herself. Ichigo, oblivious to her thoughts, waved at her casually. "Hey, Rukia." Rukia ignored him, pretending to inspect the room instead. Annoyed, Ichigo got up and approached her, but she continued to act as if he wasn't there. Finally, Ichigo had enough and delivered a light kick to her shin. "Don't ignore me." "I was trying to be polite," he said irritably. Rukia glared at him, rubbing her shin. "You kicked me. What kind of greeting is that? It's the kind you get when you act like I'm invisible. Anyway, yeah, I can. See you. I'm a Shinigami too," Ichigo Kurosaki, son of Isshin Shiba, former captain of Squad 10, Ichigo replied with a smirk. Rukia's eyes widened in surprise, her mouth opening slightly as if to say something, but she was interrupted by the sudden spike of a hollow spiritual pressure. Ichigo's expression darkened as he felt the oppressive energy. Without a word, Ichigo leapt out of his window, summoning a rapier bow in midair. His crimson eyes locked onto the hollow before it could approach his home, and with one precise shot, he destroyed it instantly. As the hollow disintegrated, Rukia appeared beside him, her expression a mix of shock and intrigue. Ichigo glanced at her, his expression unreadable. He calmly stated, "What? You didn't think I'd let it get close to my family, did you?" Rukia watched him silently, realizing that this human Shinigami hybrid might be far more complicated than she had initially thought. Outside the Urahara shop, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the quiet street. Ichigo Kurosaki stood casually against a lamppost, arms crossed over his chest. Across the road, the door to the shop creaked open, and Kisuke Urahara stepped out, fanning himself lazily with his striped hat. The former captain seemed unsurprised to find Ichigo waiting. Ichigo coolly remarked, "So, Kisuke, you knew she was here too, didn't you?" Kisuke paused mid-step, his smirk widening slightly. "Well, Ichigo, it's not like you're subtle. You've got a knack for sniffing out trouble, don't you?" he replied cheerfully. Before Kisuke could elaborate, Rukia Kachiki appeared from behind him, her footsteps sharp and deliberate. She shot a questioning glance between Ichigo and Kisuke, her brows furrowed in suspicion. "Who is this guy, Kisuke? And why does he act like he's running the show?" Rukia demanded. Ichigo barely glanced at her, his focus remaining on Kisuke. Before the shopkeeper could respond, Isshin Kurosaki suddenly stepped out from behind a nearby wall, stretching his arms dramatically. "Ah, Miss Kachiki. This is Ichigo, my and Yoruchi's protege. We've been training him for 6 years now. He's a once-in-a-million prodigy." Isshin grinned proudly. Rukia's eyes narrowed, her skepticism clear as she regarded Ichigo, who seemed uninterested in proving himself. He adjusted the strap of his bag, his posture relaxed but firm. "Take Rukia with you, Kisuke. Now that you've got a bigger place, she can stay there. And while you're at it, make her a jigai," Ichigo cut in firmly. Kisuke chuckled, tipping his hat slightly as if acknowledging a challenge. "Direct as always, Ichigo." "Alright, I'll take her in. Tensai will have a room ready for Miss Kachiki by the time we arrive," Kisuke responded, amused. Rukia hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the abruptness of the exchange. She shot one last curious glance at Ichigo before reluctantly following Kisuke. As they walked away, Kisuke couldn't resist one last playful remark. "You're as charming as ever, Ichigo. Don't ever change." Ichigo ignored him, his expression unreadable as he watched them disappear down the street. The walk to Urahara's expanded shop was quiet, the atmosphere tinged with unspoken questions. Finally, Rukia broke the silence, unable to suppress her curiosity any longer. "How powerful is that guy? And is he really as smart as he acts?" she asked seriously. Kisuke chuckled, snapping his fan shut with a flick of his wrist. "Oh, Ichigo. Let's just say he's special. Power-wise, he's on a whole other level, even for someone his age. As for smarts, let's just say he learns faster than anyone I've ever met. And trust me, I've met some geniuses," he grinned slyly. Rukia's skepticism deepened, but so did her intrigue. "Someone like that? How have I never heard of him before?" she muttered to herself. Kisuke smirked but said nothing, letting her thoughts swirl as they continued walking. Back at the Kurosaki household, Ichigo stepped inside, the familiar creak of the door barely audible over the quiet hum of the evening. He called out calmly, "Mom, Dad, you two can come out now." From a side room, Masaki and Isshin stepped into the hallway. Masaki's expression was warm and relieved, while Isshin looked as though he was about to burst with pride. "Thank you, Ichigo. You always handle things so responsibly," Masaki said gently. Isshin, however, had other ideas. "My son is so cool now, it's almost embarrassing. What happened to the kid who used to cry for snacks?" he mock-whined. Ichigo rolled his eyes, already heading toward the stairs. Yeah. Keep dreaming, old man," he replied dryly. Isshin lunged dramatically, pretending to collapse against Masaki. "Our son has grown up so fast. Masaki, why does he treat me like this?" he wailed. Masaki chuckled softly, patting Isshin's arm as she watched Ichigo disappear upstairs. Later that night, Rukia sat in the small but comfortable room that Tensai had prepared for her. The walls were bare, save for a single window that offered a view of the quiet street below. She stared out into the darkness, her mind racing. "Who is he really?" "A prodigy," Kisuke said. "But why does he act so indifferent? What's his story?" The questions lingered in her mind as she gazed out at the night sky, her determination growing with every passing moment. "I need to know more about him," she thought softly. The scene faded as the moonlight bathed the room in a soft glow, leaving Rukia deep in thought. The previous night, Orihime walked happily through the crossing, the signal shining green as she hummed a cheerful tune. She sang, carrying a bag of groceries. The night seemed peaceful until headlights beamed down the street. A car sped toward the crossing, its brakes screeching as it barely missed her. Orihime stumbled back, startled but unharmed. The driver yelled out the window, "Watch where you're going." "Oh, sorry. My bad." Orihime apologized with an awkward laugh before hurrying away. Her humming picked up again as if the near accident hadn't just happened. The next day in the evening, Ichigo sat on a bench in the park with his arms crossed, staring blankly ahead. Beside him, Rukia was absorbed in a horror comic book, her face contorted in a mix of fascination and annoyance. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, flipping a page. "Who believes ghosts act like this?" Ichigo ignored her, his thoughts elsewhere, until he noticed Orihime approaching. She was walking down the path, humming another odd tune. Orihime's eyes lit up when she spotted Ichigo. "Ichigo," she called out. A mischievous grin spread across her face as she tried to sneak up behind him. "Hi, Ichigo," she shouted suddenly. Ichigo didn't even flinch, turning back calmly. "Hello, Orihime. What are you doing here?" "I brought some stuff for dinner," she said, lifting her bag proudly. Ichigo raised an eyebrow, wondering what she was planning to cook this time. "What about you? What are you doing?" Orihime asked curiously. "Just passing time," Ichigo replied casually. Her eyes fell on Rukia, who was still holding the comic book. "Rukia?" Orihime exclaimed, confused. Rukia froze, caught off guard. Ichigo discreetly scribbled something on a small piece of paper and handed it to her. The note read, "She's Orihime Inoue, in our class." Rukia immediately shifted her expression, adopting an exaggeratedly polite tone. "Well, hello there, Miss Inoue. How do you do, my dear," she said, lifting her skirt slightly in an overly formal curtsy. Orihime giggled and played along. "I'm doing great. And you?" Ichigo sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He wondered why they were both so bad at acting normal. His gaze shifted down to Orihime's legs, where he noticed fresh cuts and bruises. "Orihime," he said, his tone serious, "how did you get those injuries?" "Huh? Oh, these?" Orihime said, looking down at her scraped knees. "I got run over." Ichigo's eyes widened in shock. "Run over? By a car?" Orihime nodded nonchalantly. "Yeah, last night. I went out to buy a drink, and bam. It's okay, though. It's been happening a lot lately." "A lot lately?" Rukia exclaimed, incredulous. "Do you always get this many injuries?" Ichigo sighed, shaking his head. "She daydreams a lot. That's probably why." Orihime smiled sheepishly. "Anyway, I have to get going. Shoten's about to start." "I'll come with you," Ichigo offered. "No, it's fine." Orihime waved him off quickly, her cheeks slightly pink. "See you tomorrow." As she walked away, she mumbled to herself, "Why didn't I say yes?" Ichigo watched her leave, his expression darkening. Rukia noticed his change in demeanor and asked, her voice serious, "Ichigo, do you think?" "Yes," Ichigo interrupted. "Orihime used to have an older brother. He died 3 years ago. I remember when she brought him to my dad's clinic. He'd been in an accident, hit by a car. My old man tried to transfer him to a bigger hospital, but he trailed off, his voice quiet. He didn't make it." Rukia's gaze softened. Her brother. Could he be? Ichigo's silence confirmed her suspicions. Later that night, Ichigo stepped out of the shower, towel drying his hair as he entered his room. His phone buzzed with an alert from his device, a hollow had been detected nearby. "Right here, huh?" he muttered, popping a chicken candy into his mouth. His soul separated from his body, and his fiery Zanpakuto, Kurama, appeared in his hand. The hollow emerged, a massive, snake-like creature with black hair and a skull-like mask. Its yellow eyes glinted with malice as it hissed, coiling its long body. "Hollow," Ichigo said, recognizing the creature's form. The creature lunged, but Ichigo dodged, slashing at its tail with precision. "You're Sora, aren't you?" he asked, his tone sharp. The hollow snarled but didn't respond, attacking again. Ichigo countered with a blazing strike from Kurama, breaking through its defenses. With a final, fiery blow, he shattered the hollow's mask. As the creature dissolved, a human face emerged from its remains. Sora, Orihime's older brother, looked at Ichigo with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you for protecting Orihime," Sora said weakly. Ichigo nodded, his expression somber. "As a big brother myself, I couldn't let you hurt her." Sora smiled faintly before his spirit faded into the light, disappearing into the night. Rukia entered Ichigo's room just as he returned to his body. "Everything okay?" she asked. "It's over," Ichigo said, his voice heavy. Sora passed away peacefully. He was the one behind all this. Rukia nodded in understanding. "You did the right thing." Ichigo didn't respond, staring out the window into the night. His thoughts were with Orihime and the brother who had loved her so much. Somewhere else, at a construction site on the edge of town, Chad was working alongside a group of men, hauling heavy beams and tools as the afternoon sun bore down on them. His towering figure and quiet demeanor made him stand out, but what truly caught everyone's attention was the small parakeet perched on his shoulder. The parakeet, bright green with streaks of yellow on its wings, chirped in a voice that was far from ordinary. "Careful with that beam. You might drop it on your foot," it said, its tone almost scolding. One of the workers laughed nervously, glancing at Chad. "Man, you've got a weird pet there. It really talks, huh?" Chad adjusted his grip on the beam he was carrying and gave a small nod. "Yeah. He talks a lot." The parakeet flapped its wings and tilted its head. "Don't ignore me, Chad. I'm giving good advice here." The workers nearby exchanged amused glances. "Where'd you even get that thing?" one of them asked. Chad paused, setting the beam down carefully before replying. "Found him while walking home a couple of days ago. He looked lost, so I took him in." The parakeet piped up again, its voice more serious now. "I'm not lost. I'm searching for something important." "You're helping me, right, Chad?" Chad glanced at the bird, his expression unreadable. "Yeah. I'll help." Suddenly, a loud cracking noise echoed through the construction site, followed by the groaning sound of a metal beam giving way. The workers froze, their eyes darting upward. A massive beam had come loose, hurtling down toward the group of men below. "Look out," someone shouted. The workers scrambled to get out of the way, but the falling beam was too fast. Just as it was about to crush them, Chad stepped forward, his massive frame bracing against the impact. He caught the beam on his broad shoulders, gritting his teeth as the weight drove him to one knee. "Chad," one of the workers yelled, panic in his voice. The parakeet flapped its wings frantically, its voice shrill. "Chad! Be careful." Chad stood up slowly, the muscles in his arms and legs straining under the weight of the beam. He moved deliberately, guiding the beam away from the workers and letting it crash to the ground behind him. Dust and debris flew everywhere, but no one was hurt. As the dust settled, Chad straightened up, brushing off his shoulders. His shirt was torn, and blood trickled from a cut on his arm, but he didn't seem to notice. The parakeet perched on his shoulder, its voice softer now. "Thank you, Chad. You saved everyone." One of the workers approached him cautiously. "Are you okay? You're bleeding." Chad shook his head, his tone calm. "I'm fine. Just a scratch." The parakeet tilted its head, its beady eyes fixed on Chad. "You really are something else. My name is Yuichi Shibata, by the way. I've been meaning to tell you that." Chad looked at the bird, his expression as stoic as ever. "Yuichi Shibata," he repeated, as if testing the name. The parakeet gave a small nod, its tiny chest puffing out. "Yeah. That's my name. Thanks for saving me too, Chad. I owe you one." Chad's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Don't worry about it. The workers exchanged bewildered glances, still trying to process the talking bird and Chad's superhuman strength. But Chad, as always, paid them no mind. With Yuichi perched securely on his shoulder, he turned back to the construction site, ready to get back to work.